Psychology 101 dives into the secrets of covert emotional manipulation, dark persuasion, mind control, deception, hypnotism, brainwashing, and the tricks of the trade. Welcome to one of the most powerful books on psychology out there. So what is dark psychology? They say knowledge is power. If that's true, then understanding human psychology gives you a sort of superpower. Psychology is about understanding how the human mind works, and it affects every part of our lives, from ads and finance to crime, religion, love, and even hate. If you grasp psychological principles, you hold the key to influencing others, a key that not many possess. But getting this kind of knowledge isn't easy. Often, it's buried in dense academic journals, kept away from the general public. To break down this complex information into something useful takes a lot of work, sifting through endless books to find what really matters. That's exactly what's been done here. You're reading a cutting-edge summary of some powerful psychological principles. You don't need to have a special background to gain something from this book, just a willingness to learn, think, and put your new insight into action. This book opens a door to a hidden world that most people don't know about, and even fewer truly understand, the realm of dark psychology. These are tactics employed by some of history's most influential figures. You're about to explore the minds of history's cleverest manipulators and the shocking concepts they created. Not only will you learn the principles behind what feels like psychological magic, but you'll also see how these ideas are put into practice. Plus, there are real-life case studies that let you see these principles in action throughout history. Why is it crucial to understand dark psychology? Because it's everywhere. You might not like that truth, but ignoring it won't change a thing. You have a choice: stay in the dark, risking becoming a victim, or take charge and learn how to protect yourself and your loved ones. People can be ruthless in how they exploit others psychologically. Understanding dark psychology isn't just about protecting yourself. There are ideas in it that can actually help you succeed in life. No one wants you to turn into a villain, but a little extra power can really boost your everyday experiences. Remember, with great power comes great responsibility. How you decide to use this knowledge is entirely up to you. It can be your strongest shield or a tool to gain an edge in life. The concepts laid out in this book are just tools. You can use them to create whatever you want. However, this book isn't for the lighthearted or the easily swayed. Once you peek behind the curtain of dark psychology, it's a one-way trip. You'll gain insights about human behavior that very few manage to grasp. You've been warned. So what's covert emotional manipulation? Well, it's important. This tactic, or CEM for short, is at the forefront because it's a key part of many dark psychology strategies. As you explore this field, you'll start to see the signs of CEM everywhere. Recognizing what it is will be crucial for your understanding. Covert emotional manipulation is when someone tries to influence how another person thinks or feels in a sneaky way. The trick is, the affected person often has no clue it's happening. Let's break down that term. Covert means secretive, implying that a manipulator hides their true intentions. Not all influence is covert, though. Victims of CEM usually don't realize they've been manipulated, don't see how it was done, and can't even guess why the manipulator acted that way. Think of CEM like a stealth bomber, sneaking in undetected until it's too late. The emotional angle signifies that the manipulator focuses specifically on feelings. People's behaviors, beliefs, and willpower are key areas of focus. Emotional states play a huge role in how someone perceives their reality. That's why many manipulators zoom in on this aspect. They know that emotions drive every part of our personality. Manipulating someone's feelings can feel like a deep cut. If someone can manage their emotions, they can control their life. Now let's talk about manipulation. There's a common myth that influence and manipulation are the same, but they're not. Manipulation is sneaky. It happens without the other person even realizing it. The intention behind influencing someone differs from that behind manipulating them. Influencers aim to help you make choices that benefit you. Manipulators, on the other hand, want to control you for their own gain. Understanding the intent behind actions helps you tell the difference between emotional manipulation and genuine influence. Now you've got a clearer picture of what covert emotional manipulation is and how it stands apart from other influences. Next, we'll look into where this kind of manipulation often springs up and highlight some typical manipulative personalities. Generally, there are four main areas where you might encounter covert emotional manipulation: professional, personal, romantic, and family settings. Romantic manipulation is probably the most widespread, and it can even be the most harmful. Covert emotional manipulation can pop up in many places. Once you grasp the idea and its practical uses, you'll be better equipped to protect yourself, no matter where you are. Just like there are familiar situations where covert manipulation occurs, there are also common types of people who embody these manipulative traits. Connecting the theory behind covert emotional manipulation with real-life examples is crucial to grasping it fully. A controlling partner in a relationship is a typical example of these manipulative principles. If someone finds themselves caught in a relationship like this, when someone realizes their partner is trying to control them, it can feel disgusting. They often want to escape that situation. That's why many controlling partners use sneaky tactics to exert their influence. The girlfriend or wife becomes a victim of total emotional manipulation, often without even knowing it's happening. This gives the manipulator the control they crave, without the risk of being found out and losing their partner. Even a so-called friend can play this game, using emotional manipulation to get what they want from others. A common type of manipulator is someone who subtly makes their friend feel guilty, sympathetic, or obligated. The friend being manipulated won't understand why they feel this way. They just can't pinpoint the source of their emotions. In the workplace, emotional manipulators can thrive too. Many people have tales of dealing with a boss or authority figure who somehow sparks feelings of guilt, fear, or duty in them. Those being manipulated often can't identify why they feel this way or where those feelings come from. Family situations can be particularly tricky when it comes to emotional manipulation. A skilled manipulator within the family can be very dangerous. Because emotional manipulation is powerful, even if the connection isn't strong, when it's tied to blood relations, the level of control can soar. Why is family such a hotbed for this? Simply put, people already feel an obligation to help family members. They go above and beyond to meet their needs. This inclination makes them more susceptible to covert manipulative tactics, creating very malleable victims. So how do these covert emotional manipulators gain such control? They use a range of tactics that are tough to notice and even harder to resist. Let's dive into the hidden tactics of emotional manipulators. You've got a grasp on what covert emotional manipulation is and the kinds of scenarios it pops up in. That's a solid start. Now it's crucial to identify some specific methods these manipulators use to gain control. The goal here is to keep their tactics under the radar. This part is all about revealing the secrets for everyone to see. One common tactic is called love bombing. This is when emotional manipulators shower their target with intense, overwhelming affection right at the beginning. It might feel odd, right? If someone's out to hurt you, why are they being so incredibly nice? Because it serves their agenda. The idea behind love bombing is to create strong feelings of trust and attachment in the victim. The manipulator assesses the situation. If the person is lonely or desperate for connection, they'll ramp up the affection. On the other hand, someone more self-assured might get a gentler, subtler approach. From love bombing, we learn two key things about covert emotional manipulation. First, it shows just how sneaky these tactics can be. Imagine trying to spot love bombing as harmful. After all, this person's been so kind to me and made me feel great. That's not likely to raise any alarms, right? This is a classic case of something harmful being masked as something good. The second takeaway is about how manipulators tailor their tactics to fit each specific person they target. Experienced manipulators have handled several situations before, gaining insights along the way. They learn just how much love, at what time, works best for different people. Everyone reacts differently to displays of affection. Compliments can win over some people, while gifts might impress others. But if someone inexperienced tries to connect with a tough cookie like bomb a target, they probably won't get very far. It takes know-how to figure out how a person will react to different tactics. Just like a doctor knows how to prescribe the right medicine, a skilled manipulator knows how to use the right tricks at the right times. There's a method called intermittent positive reinforcement that often follows a phase called love bombing. It's basically a sneaky way to control someone without them even noticing. In a classic manipulation scenario, love bombing happens first, followed by some positive reinforcement, and then intermittent positive reinforcement kicks in. So what's the deal with this order? Love bombing is all about showering someone with intense affection right at the beginning. It's designed to break down their walls, make them dependent on the manipulator, and set up a friendly or romantic vibe. After that love bombing phase, things change. The manipulator shifts gears and stops with the non-stop positivity. Instead, they hold back any praise until the person does something the manipulator wants. For instance, if the manipulator wants their target to call them more, they'll only smile or show appreciation when that happens. The target won't realize that this positive attention is being used like a tool against them, but they'll start doing what the manipulator likes just to feel good again. Then comes intermittent positive reinforcement, or IPR for short. Here, the manipulator even holds back praise when the target does what they want. So, if they want the person to buy them things, they'll only reward that behavior with positive feedback sometimes. This unpredictability can really get into the target's head. Victims often have an unconscious desire for positive attention. They don't even realize what's happening. As a result, they'll seek a good reaction from their manipulator by any means necessary. The manipulator guides their behavior without the victim understanding why. Techniques like love bombing, positive reinforcement, and occasional cold withdrawal show how a hidden emotional manipulator can twist someone's feelings and responses. Reality denial is one of those methods, affecting the mind first rather than the emotions. But make no mistake, the emotional aftermath can be devastating. Losing your grip on sanity is one of the scariest things a person can face. It's tough enough when it's linked to something tangible, like mental health issues or stress. But it's far more alarming when that feeling is secretly created by someone else. Reality denial covers a range of manipulative tactics, all aimed at shattering a victim's grip on reality for the manipulator's own benefit. We'll break down how this plays out and its effects. A key aspect of reality denial is how slowly it unfolds. Manipulators don't seek to destroy a victim's sanity overnight. That would raise too many alarm bells. Instead, they chip away at it gradually, weakening the victim's trust in their own mind until they're barely holding on. So, how does a covert manipulator start this process? It often kicks off by subtly undermining the victim's confidence in their memory. They'll craft situations that leave the victim doubting their recall of events, ensuring their own version of reality seems the most believable. This slow erosion of confidence is just the beginning. This technique serves two sneaky purposes at once. First, it makes the victim doubt their own memory and understanding. Second, it shifts that trust onto the manipulator. Initially, it might not seem like a big deal. The manipulator appears to be just someone with a better memory. The victim might even feel grateful for a reliable recollection. But over time, the emotional manipulator ramps things up. What starts as innocent questioning turns into a full-blown crisis of confidence for the victim. They begin to doubt their own mental abilities. The real kicker here, the victim often blames themselves for their struggles. Meanwhile, the skilled manipulator keeps pulling the strings, all while keeping the victim in the dark about what's really happening. Now let's talk about persuasion. It's a big topic, often discussed in articles and books, aimed at making people more persuasive. But does that mean every persuasive person is a dark manipulator? Not at all. There's a clear difference between regular persuasion and dark persuasion. When someone tries to influence another person, that's persuasion. And it doesn't have to be dark. Think about a negotiator convincing a terrorist to release hostages, or a police officer talking someone down from suicide. Those are examples of positive persuasion that can even save lives. So what makes persuasion dark? The key difference lies in the motive. Positive persuasion is used to help someone do something that benefits them, like our negotiator saving lives. On the flip side, dark persuasion lacks any moral motives. It can be amoral or downright immoral. Where positive persuasion empowers people to help themselves, dark persuasion leads them to act against their own best interests, often reluctantly. Some people know they aren't making the best choices, but they're desperate to escape constant pressure. The best dark persuaders can twist things around, making someone believe they're being smart when really it's the opposite. So what drives these persuaders? It varies based on who's doing the convincing. Some have selfish motives, wanting others to do things for their own gain. Then, there are those who hurt others just for the thrill of it. They don't gain anything, but inflicting pain gives them pleasure. Others are drawn to the control that dark persuasion offers. Now, dark persuasion leads to different outcomes compared to positive persuasion. When someone persuades positively, it usually ends well for everyone involved. The persuaded might benefit, or both the persuader and the persuaded win, or even a third party might gain. In those instances, at least one person walks away happy. But with dark persuasion, it's a whole different ballgame. The persuader always wins, either directly or through their twisted need for power. The person who's persuaded often goes against their own interests and walks away worse off. The really skilled dark persuaders can not only hurt their victims and benefit personally, but they can also drag others down too. Imagine a persuader convincing someone to take their life just to cash in on an insurance policy. They profit while the victim loses everything, leaving grief in their wake. So, who exactly resorts to these dark tactics? The hallmark of a dark persuader is their complete disregard for how their actions affect others. They may be fully narcissistic, believing their desires outweigh anyone else's, or they might be sociopathic, unable to grasp other people's feelings. You often see dark persuasion in relationships where one or both partners lean into these troubling behaviors. When someone keeps trying to persuade their partner in a relationship, it can turn into a form of psychological abuse. For example, a partner might stop the other from taking a new job or enjoying personal time. The dark persuader convinces their partner they're acting in the relationship's best interest, but really, they're just causing harm. The victim ends up hurting themselves and the relationship, while the persuader feels more powerful in their manipulation. So, how do these dark persuaders get what they want? Some people might doubt that such toxic persuasion happens at all, but they'd be mistaken. It works because these persuaders are skilled at hiding their true intentions. One method they use is called the long con. This is a slow, drawn-out way of persuading someone. People often resist persuasion when they feel pressured or don't trust the person trying to persuade them. But the long con can overcome those barriers. In the long con, the dark persuader takes their time to build trust with their victim. They befriend the victim, making them feel liked and safe. This is usually done through fake friendliness and other tactics to create comfort. Once the victim feels secure, the persuader starts to manipulate them. It often begins with seemingly positive suggestions. The persuader helps the victim make choices that actually benefit the persuader instead. This serves two purposes. The victim gets used to being persuaded and starts linking the persuasion with good outcomes. For example, imagine a recently widowed woman feeling vulnerable because of her loss. A man, maybe a relative or someone from her church, befriends her. He shows her kindness and patience, so eventually she lets her guard down around him. Then, he makes small suggestions that seem helpful, like recommending a better bank account. He starts off by helping her cut down on her monthly expenses. She appreciates what he's doing and starts to trust him. Then he slyly convinces her to invest some of her money. She agrees, thinking he has her best interests at heart. But of course, he takes whatever he can. If he's really good at it, she ends up feeling like he just had a string of bad luck. That's the power of dark persuasion. When people hear about dark persuasion leading to something extreme, like encouraging someone to take their own life or commit a crime, they find it hard to believe. Who would ever do that? But they miss the point. Dark persuasion doesn't begin with a huge request out of the blue. Instead, it works like a staircase. The persuader gets the victim to take small steps, making each one seem harmless. Before they know it, they're far down the path, and the persuader won't let them back. Let's consider a psychopathic criminal who wants others to do their dirty work. Can't picture such a person? Think about gang leaders, cult figures, or someone like Charles Manson. This kind of criminal won't start by asking someone to commit murder. Nope. They might initiate with a petty crime or just asking someone to hide a weapon for them. Not a big deal, right? As time passes, the tasks get more serious. The manipulator uses those minor misdeeds as leverage. Before long, the victim feels stuck, almost forced to carry out shocking actions because they don't see another way out. Dark persuaders are skilled at increasing the intensity of their influence over time. They know their victims wouldn't leap across a canyon, so they construct a bridge, step by step, hiding their true intentions. There are several tactics that persuaders use, all based on dark psychological principles, to get what they want. Disguising their own real desires is crucial to their success. The best manipulators can adapt their approach based on who they're dealing with and the situation at hand. One effective tactic they often use is understanding that most people find it hard to say no to 2 requests in a row. Imagine a manipulative person trying to get $200 from someone. That's where the trap starts to tighten. The persuader starts by claiming they need a loan of $1,000. They paint a picture of dire consequences if they can't get the money. The victim, feeling empathy or guilt, wants to help, but knows they can't lend that much. So the persuader wisely lowers their request to $200. They might say something like, "This will keep my lights on for a few more weeks." At this point, the victim feels uncomfortable and can't say no to the smaller ask. Just like that, the persuader gets the $200, all without the victim realizing what just happened. Then there's a sneaky tactic called reverse psychology. Some people are known as boomerangs. They tend to reject what you throw at them, veering in the opposite direction. So if a dark persuader knows someone fits this type, that's a weakness they can exploit. Imagine a persuader whose friend is trying to win over a girl, but this friend's intentions are terrible. The girl is caught between the harmful friend and a decent person. The persuader nudges her toward the right choice, knowing she'll probably do the opposite and pick the bad guy. Now let's talk about leading questions. Anyone who has dealt with a smooth-talking salesperson knows how powerful verbal persuasion can be. A dark persuader excels at using leading questions. These questions are designed to provoke a specific response from the victim. For instance, they might ask, "So how bad do you think those people are?" This implies there's something wrong with those people. Compare that to a neutral question like, "How do you feel about those people?" Dark persuaders use leading questions deliberately, knowing how to twist the conversation to their advantage. When someone has experience with manipulation, they know that if the target feels they're being guided, they'll push back and become tougher to convince. If the manipulator senses this awareness, they'll quickly change their approach and only return to leading phrases once the target has settled down and they've regained their grip on influence. Now let's talk about state and state transference. State refers to the overall mood someone is in. When a person's thoughts, words, and actions align, they are in a strong congruent state. State transference is all about someone with power being able to project their emotional state onto another person. This is especially powerful for a manipulator. If an influencer understands state transference, they can employ a technique to gain control over their target. First, they'll match their emotional state to that of the target. So if the target is sad and speaking slowly, the influencer will adopt that same tone. This creates a connection on a deep subconscious level. Once they've matched states, the influencer will start to subtly change their own mood and see how the target reacts. For instance, if they speed up their speech a bit, they can check if the target follows their lead. If the target matches, that's a clear sign the influencer has made an impact. At this point, the influencer will shift into the emotional state they want the target to adopt, be it happiness or anger, depending on what suits their agenda. This technique highlights how subconscious signals can greatly affect the outcome of any attempt to persuade someone. Now, not all mind control goes unnoticed. A mind is like a personal fortress. It belongs to the individual, no matter what else they might lose. People love to believe they're fully in charge of their own thoughts and actions, just like they would control their right hand. But is that really the case? But is that really how it works when you dream? Are you really in control? If you can't focus, are you picking those distracting thoughts? Our minds are deeply influenced and can be controlled. Think about it. When you watch a horror movie, your feelings and reactions are guided by the music, the lighting, and the camera angles. Even though you know it's just a film, your brain still reacts to those cues. If something as obvious as a movie can sway our brains so much, imagine the power of a skilled manipulator working unnoticed. Undetected mind control is the most dangerous form there is. When people realize their thoughts are being influenced, they can push back, whether mentally, verbally, or physically. They can steer clear of the manipulator or the situation. Most folks would flee at the first hint of someone trying to invade their thoughts. But what if that controller is hidden, like a stealth bomber? Then, it's hard for the victim to defend themselves in time. There are two main ways to take over someone's mind without them knowing: through personal interactions or media. In the past, only big companies could use media for mind control, while individual manipulators relied on personal connections. That's changed. Now, with laptops and smartphones, media influence is in the hands of the coldest manipulators around. Before we dig into the tactics of undetected mind control, we need to understand the manipulators themselves. Like all dark psychological manipulators, these undetected controllers want to sway others, often for their own gain. They tend to be more calculating and less impulsive than some other types of manipulators. Unlike reckless psychopaths, they think carefully before acting. Controlling someone's mind without being noticed isn't easy. It takes knowledge and skill. Because of this, mind controllers are often patient and crafty. They fear getting caught, so they keep their methods hidden as much as possible, pulling the strings of their victims like puppeteers from behind a veil. Let's dive into some sneaky mind control techniques. We'll look at how manipulators control someone's thoughts without them even knowing. We're talking about tricks used in personal interactions and media, revealing just how a manipulator operates. You'll see examples of these tactics used on individuals or even larger groups. A key part of this stealthy mind control is identifying someone who has a goal. Science shows that people with a pressing need, whether that's a simple thirst or a deep emotional craving, are easier to manipulate. Imagine someone scanning a crowd for a familiar face. They filter through the crowd, focusing only on who they want. Our brains work similarly. When there's something we desire, they guide us towards it, often without us realizing we're being influenced. The best manipulators figure out what someone wants and use that to steer their decisions. A classic experiment highlights this. Two groups watched a film with a hidden image of iced tea. One group was thirsty, while the other wasn't. When given a choice to buy a drink, the thirsty crowd picked iced tea way more than expected. This shows that when our brains are desperate, they're open to suggestions. On a personal level, if a manipulator finds someone longing for a connection, maybe after a breakup, they can easily sway that person. The victim, seeking comfort, might see the manipulator as their hero, when in truth, they're working their own agenda. A manipulator often targets people's basic needs, like financial security, the desire to fit in, and the need for companionship. They can take advantage of these weaknesses for various reasons. They might want to exploit someone financially or sexually, recruit them into a cult, or just play mind games for their own twisted enjoyment. One subtle way they exert control is through limiting choices. It's a form of mind control that doesn't raise suspicion because it tricks the victim into believing they're still in charge. This technique is about making sure the person feels like they have options, while really their choices are restricted. It's similar to a popular sales trick called the choice close. Let's break this down with a simple example. Picture a woman getting asked out. A regular guy might nervously ask, "Would you like to go out with me?" This leaves room for a no. That's how most people operate. But a dark manipulator, they handle it differently. They charm, make the person laugh, and then confidently say, "So, am I taking you out on Thursday or Saturday?" Suddenly, the woman is faced with just two choices. Saying no isn't an option anymore. The sneaky part of this approach is that it leaves no obvious trace of manipulation, unlike other forms of mind control we might see in media. When a person realizes they are being limited by someone else's choices, that manipulator has two ways to react: denial or reframe. Denial lets them claim they aren't restricting choices and that the other person is just misremembering or overthinking. Reframing shifts the focus, making the victim feel guilty or defensive by saying something like, "I can't believe you're analyzing me so much. That hurts and makes me want to shut down." Both tactics serve as quick escape routes for manipulators caught in their lies. Just like our five senses help us navigate life, they can also betray us. Our sense of sight is especially powerful. We often dream in visuals, even if we can't rely on other senses. When we recall someone, we picture them rather than recalling sounds or smells. This makes visual manipulation a strong tool for media mind control. In the past, media production was dominated by big companies and institutions that expertly used subliminal messages. They inserted brief images of products or people into films, causing viewers to feel intense emotions spurred by those fleeting visuals. This strategy has even played a role in 21st century political campaigns. Now, these manipulative techniques are accessible to individuals. Scarily, they can craft these images to target specific fears of their victims. For instance, if someone knows their partner is terrified of insects, they might slyly place a book with an insect cover in the background during a video chat. With smartphones and high-definition video, it's easier than ever to slip in those feared images without the victim even realizing it. The girlfriend might not really notice the book, but on a deeper level, she'll be feeling its effects. Sound is another sneaky way someone can be influenced without realizing it. Think about it. Ever had a song stuck in your head, yet how tough was it to shake off? That sound had a grip on you, even if you knew it was there. The power of sound manipulation is stronger when you don't see it coming. Studies have shown that when diners hear music from a certain place, they're more likely to order wine from that region. When asked, they often have no clue that the music influenced their choice. One notable example of this mind control through sound is when messages are hidden in songs and other media. There have even been lawsuits trying to stop musicians from sneaking in secret references. This isn't just a game in the music industry. Governments have used audio manipulation for their agendas, like in North Korea, where people are made to listen to patriotic tunes regularly. These songs dig deep into a person's mindset, creating a silent impact. For something a bit lighter, consider jingles. When you hear a catchy tune, like the McDonald's "I'm Lovin' It," you often find yourself repeating that catchy message without even thinking about it. Audio mind control isn't just about mass media. Individuals can use it too. There are all kinds of tactics for influencing others using sound. Even if you know what to look for, it can still be hard to spot them because they're so sneaky. One of the eeriest forms of this is using sound while someone sleeps. You might have seen those sleep CDs that claim to help people quit smoking. A skilled manipulator is like the dark side of those products. When someone is in deep slumber and completely relaxed, that's when a manipulator can sneak in their twisted commands and let them sink in. There's this interesting method known as auditory mind control. It works by masking specific words with sounds or phrases that are similar. Ever watched American Psycho? While it's fictional, it showcases actual mind control techniques. The main character, Patrick Bateman, who's a serial killer, openly shares what he does: murders and executions. When asked about what he said, he coolly replies that he's in acquisitions and mergers. This kind of messaging seeps into people's minds without them even realizing it. There are sounds that humans can't perceive, but that can still affect us deeply. Certain frequencies can create feelings of fear, dread, or anxiety in those exposed to them unknowingly. While they're often used in horror films, clever manipulators can also use these sounds to destabilize their victims emotionally. Let's talk about mind games now. You've probably heard the phrase dark mind games. Unlike some other dark psychological traits we discuss here, mind games are something many folks think they understand in their daily lives. But truth be told, most people can't truly grasp what mind games mean. Just like many say they're depressed without fitting the true definition of depression, people often claim to know what mind games are without really having a clue. Some might even label regular behavior as mind games. like if someone is teasing them or hinting at a surprise. That's not accurate, especially in dark psychology. The motivations behind real mind games aren't positive or friendly at all. Innocent teasing or fun surprises definitely don't count as mind games. So what are mind games in this context? They involve psychological tactics used by a manipulator aimed at disturbing the victim's sanity and willpower. It's a different ballgame from other types of dark manipulation, because here, the manipulator is playing around with the victim's mind, often just for kicks. They're not as invested in the outcome. Manipulation can often lean towards darker intentions, showing less concern for the severity of what's happening. A dark mind game, in simple terms, is a game someone plays just for their own fun, with no thought given to how it affects the victim. Depending on how the game unfolds, the intention is usually to probe the victim's mind, much like a child experimenting with a new toy. The best dark psychological games are sneaky. They hide their true nature, making them hard to spot and very damaging. When we consider dark mind games versus lighter ones, we delve into the motivations behind these manipulative tactics. Let's dive deeper into the various reasons why someone might play these games. Often, the goal is to push the victim to behave, think, or feel in a certain way. Sometimes the manipulator finds that other approaches aren't working, so they resort to mind games as a subtler option. This can also stem from a twisted sense of fun, where the manipulator finds pleasure in both controlling others and deriving enjoyment from their psychological tactics. Mind games can quietly chip away at a person's confidence and mental strength, often in a way that's hard to notice. They can influence someone while keeping the illusion that the victim still has control. However, seeking influence isn't the only reason someone plays these games. Many manipulators engage in mind games purely for entertainment, with no deeper motive. They take joy in plotting how to affect a victim's thoughts and watching them fall into their trap. This kind of manipulation resembles a kind of sociopathic detachment. The manipulator overlooks the fact that the victim is a real person with feelings and thoughts, instead focusing solely on their own amusement. Seeing someone as a puzzle to solve and manipulate can be really harmful. This kind of mind play is risky. Sometimes people can be pushed to the brink of suicide just for entertainment. Dark psychological games can often come from learned behavior rather than malicious intent. Sometimes, a manipulative person has been surrounded by such games all their life and doesn't know any other way to interact. This might seem innocent, but it's not. Just because someone might not realize they're doing something wrong doesn't free them from accountability. In some ways, these unthinking manipulators can be the most dangerous. They don't have a clue about better options, so they're unlikely to change or grow. Now let's dive into the specific types of mind games people play. Much like the broader idea of mind games, there are both harmless and sinister versions of each. It's crucial to recognize which ones fall under dark psychology and which are just part of daily life. Take ultimatums, for example. An ultimatum is when someone presents another person with a tough choice. It usually sounds like a demand: do this or else. Think about statements like, quit smoking or I'll leave you, or lose weight, or I'll date others. Ultimatums are more like demands than requests. They're a key element of dark psychological games, but not every ultimatum is manipulative. To figure out if an ultimatum is an example of dark psychology, we need to consider three main factors: who's making the ultimatum, their intentions, and what the ultimatum actually says. We'll look into each of these factors to get a fuller understanding of this manipulation tactic. The person giving the ultimatum plays a vital role in determining if it's rooted in dark psychology. In a non-dark ultimatum, for instance, the issuer typically shows genuine care and concern. When it comes to helping others, some people we think of might be close relatives, like siblings or spouses. However, just because someone is in these roles doesn't mean their demands are free from manipulation. To really understand an ultimatum, we need to look at the motivation behind it. When someone gives an ultimatum out of genuine concern, it's usually because they want to help improve the other person's life. This could mean promoting better health or stopping bad habits. For instance, a caring ultimatum might sound like, drink less, or I can't stick around, or let's hit the gym together, or we shouldn't plan for more kids. These kinds of ultimatums come from a place of wanting the best for someone and encouraging positive choices. However, figuring out whether an ultimatum comes from a good place can be tricky. Often, the nature of the ultimatum itself reveals if it's manipulative. Dark psychological ultimatums frequently push someone to act against their own interests or to do something that feels wrong to them. This way, the manipulator tests how far the person will go against their own values. On the flip side, a healthy ultimatum won't force someone to harm themselves or compromise their morals. By now, you should have a sense of what a good ultimatum looks like based on who is giving it, their intentions, and what the ultimatum aims to achieve. So what's a classic example of a dark psychological ultimatum? The first sign is often the person behind it. They might not have a legitimate reason to influence the other person's life. For example, the one giving the ultimatum could be a secret lover, a boss, or a friend who has too much power over the victim. Sometimes, they may even hold a legitimate role, like being a spouse or parent, but still act in ways that cross the line. If someone in your circle is throwing ultimatums your way, that's a real sign that dark psychology is at work. So, what do these manipulative folks say? Their ultimatums can really hurt or conflict with a person's values. Imagine someone who doesn't drink because of health or moral reasons. A manipulator spots this and finds it entertaining, even twisted. They might come up with ultimatums based on alcohol, trying to bend the victim's will. They might say, "Take a shot with me or I'm leaving," or "Either drink up or don't bother coming to the party, you won't be welcome." At their worst, these ultimatums can escalate to threats of self-harm, suicide, or even murder. Picture this. A manipulator might say, "Cut your arm or I'll cut mine." There's even a story where a controlling girlfriend tells her boyfriend to kill another man or she'll leave him, insisting it's proof of his love. At the absolute extreme, some people are manipulated into ending their own lives through a supposed suicide pact, only for the manipulator to back out once the victim is gone. In any healthy romantic relationship, a sense of security is key. Those in happy partnerships feel safe and rarely worry that their relationship could end at any moment. But manipulators know this well. They thrive on creating chaos and instability to keep their victims feeling powerless. One of their go-to tactics is what's called the eternal breakup. This game involves constantly threatening to leave. This could mean hinting at a breakup, claiming to leave, or actually breaking up without following through. Each of these manipulative strategies can have serious effects, which will be looked at closely now. Implied breakups happen when someone doesn't say they're breaking up, but still hints at it. The manipulator will drop casual references about plans that exclude their partner. They might say things like, "I won't tolerate this for much longer," or other subtle hints. Any comment that plants doubt about how stable the relationship is counts as an implied breakup. Then there's the promised breakup. This is when the manipulator directly threatens the other person, stating that they plan to break up in the future. They might say something like, "I'm leaving you soon, and I won't deal with this anymore." It's all talk about separation or divorce, but they don't actually go through with it. The actual breakup, which never happens, is the worst part of this endless breakup game. The manipulator might act like they're leaving, packing a bag, and even acknowledging how upset their partner is, but then they just don't go. They might break things off without the intention of really sticking to it, only to come back when their partner begs and feels miserable. Now that you get what an eternal breakup looks like, let's dive into why it's used as a tactic in manipulation. This game is intended to shake up the victim's sense of certainty and security, taking away their power and putting it in the manipulator's hands. It can serve as a twisted test, showing how far the victim will go to stay in the relationship. The manipulator can even play the hero, deciding not to break up when the victim shows emotion and pleads for things to stay on track. So why does this tactic hit home for so many people? When someone hears about this tactic for the first time, they might think it's odd. After all, anyone would gladly break up with a manipulative person, right? But that misses the point of dark psychology. The truth is, victims aren't in a healthy state of mind. They can't see clearly why the relationship needs to end. Instead, they feel vulnerable and easily swayed by the manipulator's influence. Because of this, they try hard to hold on to a relationship that's turned into a twisted playground for the manipulator. For someone stuck in this cycle of endless breakups, the damage can be serious. They often develop deep-rooted trust issues, making it hard to trust anyone else later on. This can ruin their work life and relationships with family, which ironically is just what the manipulator wants. After being broken down for so long, the victim may become almost like a servant to the manipulator, doing anything to avoid another breakup. But at this point, the manipulator can lose interest. They've shattered their victim's spirit and then move on to someone new, leaving a trail of destruction behind. Then there's the hard-to-get game. This tactic can often look like normal, healthy behavior, but there's a clear line between innocent and dark psychological uses of it. The harmless version is pretty simple. When someone likes another person, they might hold back a little to seem like a challenge. They might not accept every date right away or reply to texts too fast. The goal here is to spark interest and develop a happy relationship. But when it comes to dark psychology, playing hard to get shifts entirely. It's not just about being unavailable at the start. It's used later in the relationship too, with very different motives behind it. Those using these dark tactics play this game when it suits them, with manipulation as their main goal. Their goal isn't to create a positive outcome, and they won't care about the victim's well-being. The hard-to-get tactic can sometimes seem innocent because at the start of a relationship, people aren't dependent on each other. Being hard to get doesn't cause harm then. But when someone starts being evasive and unreliable later in the relationship, the impact can be much more damaging. Sometimes, people will act hard to get by being unreliable or unavailable after both partners have made a commitment. This flips the usual relationship dynamic. Typically, relationships start out a bit mysterious and become steadier over time, but a manipulator will act firm at the beginning to create a false sense of connection, then gradually pull away once their victim is invested. When this hard-to-get behavior happens later, it makes the other person chase after them, trying harder to reconnect with someone who's pulling away. This boosts the manipulator's ego and gives them power. The most skilled manipulators mix their hard-to-get actions with moments that show closeness and reliability, creating confusion and instability in the victim's mind, which they can exploit. Now let's talk about deception. Whether it's dark or not, deception plays a major role in dark psychology. It can often be hard to distinguish between types of deception. Before we dive into what separates dark deception from more ordinary forms, let's clarify what deception really means. Many people think lying is the same as deception, but that's not true. Lying is just one kind of deception. Instead of viewing deception as just lying, think of it as misleading. Any action or word that leads someone to believe something untrue falls under deception. Common forms include lying, leaving out the truth, implying falsehoods, or presenting fake evidence for something that isn't true. You might notice that you've done some of these things at some point in your life. But does it mean all deception falls under dark psychology? Not really. Everyone lies, to some degree. People might stretch the truth for various reasons: kindness, embarrassment, or feeling less than stellar about themselves. For instance, studies show that many men inflate their height on dating sites. That doesn't make them experts in dark psychology. We also trick ourselves about health, dreams, and happiness. These everyday little fibs don't count as dark deception. So, when does deception turn dark? It happens when it's aimed at hurting or ignoring the feelings of the person being deceived. Normal lies often come from struggling to face reality. Dark deception, though, is when someone knows the truth doesn't fit their agenda, so they twist, hide, or overlook it. In short, those who use dark psychology manipulate to harm, not to help. They act in their own interests, regardless of the damage they do. Some believe small lies aren't dark, while only big ones qualify. That's a misconception. As we dig into the concept of the deception spectrum, you'll see it's not about the size of the lie, it's about the intention behind it. Deception can be big or small, but a common mistake is thinking only big lies matter. This is a serious error. Small lies can be wielded powerfully by cunning manipulators, often even more effectively than larger ones. Conversely, some of the biggest deceptions have been crafted by those with a clear agenda. Now, let's explore various examples, big and small, to illustrate what the deception spectrum really means. So, what are some ways smaller deceptions are employed by those skilled in dark psychology? Often, small lies are used at first to see how easily someone can be fooled. Once people start believing these little deceptions, they're more likely to buy into a bigger lie later on. This slow conditioning isn't the only trick, though. Little lies can also shake a person's confidence in their own ability to think clearly. If someone is misled about minor things and starts to feel uneasy, they might think, maybe I'm just being paranoid. Most people are quick to doubt themselves rather than suspect someone else is tricking them over seemingly small matters. Manipulators know this trust exists and exploit it without hesitation. And then there's the bigger picture. One of the biggest tricks? Convincing someone that you are actually someone else entirely, changing your name, birth date, the whole identity. The best deceivers can make others fully believe their fake story. Now that we see how those skilled in dark psychology use the art of deception, let's dive into the common subjects that often fool people. We'll also look closely at how these tricks play out, detailing the specific tactics involved. Take money, for instance. You've probably heard the saying, money is the root of all evil. It's an exaggeration, but it certainly connects to a lot of deception. Money and deceit intertwine in many ways. Some people lie to get money, others hide their financial struggles. Since money is such a frequent topic, let's explore some of the common lies surrounding it. One well-known trick in this realm is the professional beggar. These are individuals who try to get money from others while hiding the fact that they might already have plenty. Some folks use psychological tricks to scam innocent people out of their money. For example, beggars sometimes hurt themselves to seem more desperate. In some extreme cases, deceitful individuals even make their kids addicted to drugs to help with their scams. It's shocking how low people will go for cash. Another common form of deception involves marital status. Some people hide their marriages to lure in new victims for financial gain, sexual reasons, or other motives. You'll find people with multiple wives around the world, all unaware of each other. Thanks to the internet and social media, uncovering these lies has become easier, but the best deceivers still manage to keep their stories straight and their wives unaware of one another. Then there are those who falsely present themselves as married. They do this because being seen as a couple often makes them seem more trustworthy. Some people exploit this perception for their own plans, like for tax benefits or insurance. A popular trick is to create a fictional dead spouse to gain sympathy and, often, money. Criminal backgrounds are another area where lies thrive. If someone has a serious criminal history, it's tough to gain trust, whether personally or professionally. Think about it. If a man with a past crime meets a woman, chances are he won't share that information right away. Sometimes this deception comes from fear of rejection. It's not really dark then. But if he hides the truth to harm someone later, that's definitely dark psychology at play. The worst kind of deception is when someone with a history of serious crimes, like rape, conceals their past to commit similar acts again. Those with such a dark mindset are often driven by their twisted urges and will go to extreme lengths. Manipulators will do just about anything to hide the truth and keep giving in to their urges. They see lying as an effective way to mask any strange or socially unacceptable feelings they have. This way, their victims won't catch on to who they really are until it's too late. For example, if someone using dark psychology is only interested in a person for sex, they know that will raise a red flag. So they lie or suggest that they're really after love and commitment. The victim ends up fooled, and the manipulator gets what they want, leaving another person hurt by deceit. One of the biggest areas for manipulation is in how a person feels about the victim. Deception becomes a powerful weapon for the manipulator, steering their victim's perception away from reality. They often mask their true intentions, especially in romantic situations, presenting an image that makes them seem like the perfect match at the right moment. Skilled manipulators can spot vulnerable people, tapping into their psychological needs and weaknesses. They use this information to disguise themselves, appearing as what the victim desires. This deception often kicks off a bigger long-term manipulation. It's not just in love either. In non-romantic scenarios, a manipulator might soften the victim's feelings to make them more vulnerable. If they're after someone easy to manipulate, they might come off as innocent, even if their real aim is to get deeply involved. They'll usually present themselves as laid back and casual, keeping up the act as long as it takes. The manipulator becomes whatever the victim needs, lowering their defenses to get their way. Let's dive into manipulation tactics. You now know what dark deception is and the areas where people often get misled. Now it's time to take a closer look at how manipulators do their dirty work. Each trick is powerful, and skilled manipulators know when to pull each one out for the maximum effect. Keep in mind, they won't just stick to one tactic. Most deceptions mix elements from each category. Lying? That's the go-to for many manipulators. They choose this when their target seems easy to fool, or when they've gradually broken down their defenses. If lies are on the table, manipulators have likely thought through how to cover their tracks and deal with any awkward questions that might pop up. These deceivers always have a backup plan during their schemes. Their lies are often neatly sewn into the truth, making them hard to spot. Picture this. A manipulator tells a story that's 90% true and just 10% false. The victim buys into it entirely, unable to figure out the tiny bit that's not real. Sometimes manipulators connect truth to a specific tone or gesture. So, when they toss a lie your way, they say it with that same tone or gesture, making it sound more credible. This is a sneakier style of deceit called implying. It hints at something false without saying it outright. For example, if someone wanted to mislead you about their wealth, they could either tell a blatant lie or imply a false image. A straight-up lie would be, "I'm rich and successful," but an implication might sound like, "I'm so stressed dealing with my accountant and my taxes. It takes up so much of my time." The manipulator acts and talks in ways that suggest they're wealthy without directly saying it. They enjoy hinting at things like this because it gives them a way out. If the victim accuses them of lying, they can honestly claim they haven't lied at all. Those hints are powerful, especially if the victim has a vivid imagination. That suggestion can act like a seed, and the victim's mind fills in the gaps, creating a distorted version of reality as the manipulator wants it. Omission is when someone skips mentioning a true fact. This differs from other types of deceit like lies or hints, where falsehoods cover the truth. Omission simply sidesteps the reality by distracting the victim's attention. For instance, if a manipulator wants to hide something from their past, they just won't bring it up. They will steer the conversation elsewhere to avoid it. One common tactic for omission is to create an emotional barrier around a topic. The manipulator might imply that a certain part of their life is too painful to discuss, making the victim hesitant to ask about it. If the subject does come up, the manipulator can play the emotional card, making the victim feel guilty for bringing it up. Fraud takes deception to a whole new level. It's like lying, but way more elaborate. Instead of just telling a false story, a fraudster will produce fake documents and evidence to back up their claims. The best deceivers know how to be subtle about it. Rather than overtly showing a false certificate of being a doctor, they might casually leave the fake evidence around for the victim to discover on their own. Deceivers know that being too aggressive with their lies can make victims suspicious. And it's scary. Fraud is everywhere these days, especially with computers and the internet around. Scammers can use advanced software to quickly create convincing fake documents of all kinds. They pull off these scams for personal gain or professional advantage. Some of the most concerning types of fraud happen when someone lands a job under a fake identity, steals from their employer, then vanishes before anyone catches on. On a personal level, there's the horrifying aspect of people with HIV who use fake health certificates to spread the disease. When deceit turns to fraud, it shows that the person behind it really knows their dark psychology. Anyone willing to break the law and face serious charges is deeply committed to their manipulation. While many people dabble in deceit, the true pros are the ones to watch out for. Ironically, skilled manipulators often pretend to be the ones getting tricked, casting their victims as the real deceivers. This tactic helps them escape scrutiny themselves. It's a classic example of layered deception, showcasing the calculating strategies deceitful people employ. Now let's talk about hypnotism. It's real and often misunderstood. When people hear hypnotism, they might picture some guy in a top hat swinging a pocket watch around. But believing in that cliché can be dangerous. Real hypnotists use subtle yet powerful techniques. They tap into psychology's darker side to greatly influence others. So rather than the old stereotype, hypnotism is simply the skill of making suggestions that resonate with someone. When someone is in a vulnerable state, skilled manipulators can make powerful suggestions that really stick. This gives them a unique kind of power over their victims. Unlike some of the other techniques we talk about, hypnosis isn't something you find in everyday life in a harmless way. Hypnosis can come through both words and body language. Often these suggestions are subtle, so they can easily fly under the radar. Hypnosis targets the deepest layers of a person's mind. A good hypnotist knows how to create a hypnotic state and can slip past a person's defenses, influencing them without anyone noticing. Now that you see the difference between the common idea of hypnosis and how it really works, let's dive into the main tactics hypnotists use. There are many variations of these techniques, but they highlight key things to watch out for. We'll share examples to shed light on how these operators work unnoticed in our daily lives. Suggestions can be quiet. If we think of hypnosis in this darker psychological way, we need to redefine what we mean by suggestion. People often think of a suggestion as a clear command, like saying, "I suggest you do this." But that's not the full story. The understanding of suggestion in dark psychology is quite different. First, realize that hypnotic suggestions can be spoken or unspoken. Imagine the human brain as an iceberg. The visible tip above water is all about the thoughts we know and understand, but the vast underwater section represents the parts of our minds that are hidden and not fully understood. If you need proof of this hidden power, just think about dreams and how our minds can create vivid images and sounds while we sleep. Dark hypnotists focus their efforts on this deep, subconscious part of the mind. There are two main types of suggestion used by hypnotists: silent and verbal. Each type has various forms, and the choice of technique really depends on the manipulator's goals. Some might use the approach that hits hardest on their victim's mind. Others, they might just go with whatever seems fun at the moment. Verbal suggestions can be tricky to spot. Sometimes, dark hypnotists cleverly sneak ideas into their victims' heads by using words that sound innocent. For a chilling example, if a hypnotist wanted to make someone feel suicidal, they might disguise the message, "You want to die," with something that sounds similar, like, "You want to dine." They might say it in a context that hides the true meaning. For instance, they could be chatting about a trip and say, "You have to check out this restaurant. You want to die somewhere beautiful." The victim's mind could absorb that dark message without even realizing it. Think of it like poison hidden in food. The victim eats, believing it's harmless, while actually taking in something harmful. The truly awful part is they might never catch on to it. Even if someone suspects they heard the words correctly, they'd sound insane calling it out. Most people will go with whichever option feels easier psychologically, accepting the hidden command without questioning it. A hypnotist's tone and word choice also play a big role. Some will pay close attention to how a victim speaks when they're being serious, adjusting their own pace and delivery to match. The hypnotist knows the power of voice. They pay attention to how they speak, lowering their pitch and slowing their pace. This helps them mirror the victim's tone. When they do this, the suggestions they make sink deep into the victim's mind. The hypnotist speaks this way only for the suggestive parts, then switches back to their normal voice. The victim remains clueless about what's happening. Another trick they use involves specific words that mean a lot to the victim. When someone is emotional, they often use certain terms to express those feelings. If the hypnotist picks up on these unique words, they can turn them to their own advantage. Just like people have a special tone, they have a set of personal words that carry weight without even realizing it. The manipulator gets to know their victim better than the victim knows themselves. With this knowledge of words and tones, they can twist the victim's own mind against them. Suggestions don't just come through words. Body language plays a role too. Even simple cues in a room can influence someone. It may sound hard to believe, but even small gestures can be hypnotic. Political leaders, for instance, change their hairstyles to convey different messages during speeches. It's unsettling, but the human mind can easily latch on to tiny hints. So how does a hypnotic manipulator use nonverbal cues? It all revolves around the idea of association. A skilled hypnotist links strong emotions to external signals, like eye movements. For example, if they want to trigger panic, they might use a specific eye motion when the victim feels that way. Over time, the victim's subconscious connects that gesture with panic. And just like that, the hypnotist can evoke the emotional response whenever they make that move. Eye movements can suggest ideas without needing anything else going on around you. This skill is part of what a hypnotist uses. Think about it like being called into the principal's office as a kid. Just arriving there could send you into a panic because you've learned to link that place with trouble. Hypnotists tap into this same idea, and it can be really powerful in adult situations. Imagine a hypnotist in a romantic relationship. They might choose a specific coffee shop to have important talks. Over time, the person begins to connect that coffee shop with agreeing to things. Now, whenever the hypnotist needs to sway their partner, they can lean on that special place to make it easier. Not everyone responds to hypnotism. Some people are just more open to being influenced than others. It's a complicated thing, but it often comes down to how vulnerable someone is. Those who are in a softer spot are more likely to go along with suggestions. Hypnotists often look for individuals who have recently faced a big change that impacts their stability, like a breakup or job loss. These are tough times, and our minds really seek out certainty during these moments. If a hypnotist senses that someone is feeling unsure, they can provide that certainty and shift the person's vulnerability right toward them. There are two key types of vulnerability in someone who might be a target for hypnosis: the vulnerabilities they already have, and those that become worse due to their circumstances. The best hypnotists can fight and exploit these vulnerabilities in a dangerous way. The top hypnotists know how to spot someone who's vulnerable, and they target folks who are especially open to their manipulative plans. For instance, a hypnotist might aim for a wealthy widow who's just lost her spouse. They slowly start to connect themselves with feelings of safety and comfort in her mind, all while amplifying her sense of loss and fragility. Over time, the hypnotist becomes her sole source of solace, pulling her into a cycle of dependence. But it's not just general vulnerability these hypnotists look for. They also seek out situational vulnerabilities. These are times when someone is more open to suggestion than usual. Hypnotists have clever tricks to identify this. One such trick is prompting mirroring behavior. When people feel a subconscious bond, they often begin to mimic each other without realizing it. For example, if the hypnotist changes their body language, like making a hand gesture, and the target copies it, that's a sign of situational weakness. Understanding both general and situational vulnerabilities helps skilled hypnotists create a powerful influence. If someone is already feeling fragile in life, and the hypnotist has crafted the perfect environment, that person becomes extremely suggestible. Once in that state, the hypnotist may employ their most advanced techniques, like NLP. Neuro-linguistic programming is a potent tool that even well-meaning individuals can use, often praised by business leaders and philanthropists. But putting these techniques in the hands of someone with dark intentions is dangerous. It's like handing a nuclear weapon to a psychopath, granting them both the power and desire to cause real psychological damage to others. Understanding the main techniques used in dark psychology helps us see how they can create serious effects. Let's talk about anchoring. It's a technique from NLP that links an emotional state to an external trigger. If you've heard of Pavlov's dogs, you get the idea. Hypnotists can create a strong emotion in someone and tie it to something like a gesture or a particular tone of voice. Later, by using that same trigger, they can bring back those emotions. The more sinister hypnotists can do this in a sneaky way. They take their time to plant various anchors in their victim's mind without them even realizing it. This gives the manipulator control, where they can pull emotional strings whenever they want. Sometimes they stack these anchors, quickly switching emotions. Picture feeling love, then fear, then love again, all in a rapid-fire way. It overwhelms the victim's emotions and makes them easy to manipulate. Next up is reframing. This is all about changing how someone sees unclear information. There's a saying that things aren't really good or bad unless we think they are. Reframing dives deep into that concept. Hypnotists can shift how a person thinks and feels. Imagine a skilled reframer like an editor, picking what a victim focuses on and how that focus makes them feel. It's a form of mind control. So how does reframing play out? Let's say a hypnotist has made someone stop hanging out with a specific person. The person might express sadness about missing that connection. The hypnotist can then spin those feelings in a way that serves their own agenda. For example, if the victim says, "I miss Rachel," the hypnotist might respond, "I get that you don't like where things stand, but I know you're smart enough to appreciate the freedom you have now." Now, let's take a look at how hate connects to Rachel and love ties into the feeling of freedom without her. The hypnotist cleverly plays with the victim's ego, linking their intelligence to accepting how they're being guided to see things. Think back to what you've learned about how vulnerable victims can be, and it's clear how this shift in perception can have a major impact. Then there's future pacing. This is like a form of psychological time travel. A skilled manipulator can take their victim on a mental trip to the future, shaping how they'll act and respond later on, even when time moves on independently of what they believe. At its core, future pacing means leading a victim through imagined future events. For instance, if a hypnotist wants someone to feel generous and at ease when they get money, they might ask them to visualize something like receiving their next paycheck. To make this imagined future more vivid, the hypnotist encourages them to engage all 5 senses, what they would see, feel, and touch. This sensory detail helps the mind see the future scenario as real. Once the hypnotist brings their victim into this imagined future, they start suggesting specific actions and watch how the victim reacts. They might say, "Picture yourself being really generous with this paycheck, giving to those in need, because at your core, you are a kind person." If the victim shows positive physical reactions to this scenario, the hypnotist gains confidence that they will actually act this way when the real situation arises. The best manipulators use these powerful techniques carefully. For example, a cunning hypnotist keeps their interaction with the victim 95% normal. This builds the victim's comfort and trust to high levels, allowing the small 5% of hypnotic influence to slip past their defenses unnoticed, yet it works effectively when it settles into their mind. Are you brainwashed about brainwashing? If you ask someone what it is, they'll likely say they know. But often, that vague understanding isn't really accurate. Before diving into how, where, and why brainwashing happens, it's important to clarify what it actually is and isn't. Out of all the dark psychology techniques covered here, brainwashing has the most significant impact. While other methods might target one person like a sniper's bullet, brainwashing is like a nuclear bomb. It can devastate an entire community. So what's brainwashing? It's a gradual process that swaps out someone's identity and beliefs for new ones that fit the brainwasher's agenda. This can happen to an individual or even a larger group. Think about how brainwashing can transform atheists into suicide bombers or prisoners of war into communists. It's been tested and shown to work in many scenarios. Now, what do people often get wrong about brainwashing? Many envision it as a sudden and forced event, like the scenes from A Clockwork Orange or The Matrix, where ideas are crammed into someone's head in a flash. That's Hollywood's version, far from reality. Real-world brainwashing is a slow, gradual shift. It quietly alters a person's understanding of reality, changing it from what they chose to believe into what the brainwasher imposes. The unsettling twist? The brainwasher makes sure the victim feels like they're in control the whole time. Now, where does this brainwashing commonly take place? Before we dig deeper into the process, let's look at the situations that create ripe conditions for brainwashing and the reasons behind it. Many would agree. Many people think about how cults brainwash individuals. Yet few can really pin down what a cult is or how this brainwashing happens. Let's break it down. A cult is usually a small group centered around a charismatic leader who has a strong influence over their followers. These groups often provide a simple, warped view of reality for those who join them. Why is it that brainwashing thrives in cults? The main draw of cults is their straightforward approach. They make complex life seem simple and manageable, appealing to those willing to embrace their teachings. In today's fast-paced world, life can feel chaotic. Cults cut through that chaos and confidently say, "Don't worry, we've got the answers you need." This kind of message taps into our deep need for community and acceptance. That's where brainwashing can take hold. They introduce what's called the new normal. So, what is this new normal? It's a tactic that helps cults get people to accept their beliefs by presenting them as common, widely accepted, and even positive. For instance, the idea of worshiping someone who declares themselves a god might seem bizarre in daily life, but in the closed setting of a cult, this behavior becomes ordinary. Straying from it might even seem odd to the cult members. This ongoing social reinforcement is a huge factor in how cults can ideologically brainwash their followers. Think about cults like drug dealers. A newcomer might be searching for something in their life, similar to how someone seeks their first high when trying drugs. The cult doesn't have to shove their ideology onto the new recruit. This person is already looking to fill a void, making them vulnerable to the brainwashing that follows. It's that early quest and willingness to find fulfillment that opens the door to being influenced. Ideologies also share a space with cults regarding brainwashing, but there's a big difference. Ideologies focus on the ideas themselves, while cults center around the person delivering those ideas and the followers they gather. Putting faith and trust in a cult leader and their followers can lead to what's known as ideological brainwashing. This isn't just about an individual, it dives deep into dangerous territory. Take extremist religious terrorism, for instance. A high-profile figure like Osama bin Laden can be killed, but does that stop support for the idea? Not at all. These dead figures often become martyrs, remembered as people who sacrificed their lives for the cause. This only makes the ideology more appealing to newcomers. Almost any belief system can have an extreme side where brainwashing happens. Even something as innocent as a pop band can have this effect. Young fans, during a formative time in their lives, might tie their happiness, sense of identity, and belonging to a music group. They'll defend it fiercely, sometimes even to unhealthy extremes, like self-harming if a member leaves the band. When you think about the power of brainwashing, especially in these innocent scenarios, it's startling. Now, consider how destructive it can get in more serious situations, like cults or terrorist groups. Understanding that brainwashing exists in larger social contexts is essential, but personal one-on-one situations can also be breeding grounds for brainwashing. There are both similarities and differences between group and individual brainwashing. Recognizing these can help you spot when either is happening. Individual brainwashing works like group brainwashing. It's a gradual process that replaces old beliefs with new ones designed to benefit the brainwasher. Instead of using group dynamics to establish a new normal, one-on-one brainwashing relies on a deep personal bond between the brainwasher and the person being manipulated. This can sometimes be even more powerful, as the content can be tailored to fit the victim's psychological makeup. Now that we have a grasp of what brainwashing is and where it takes place, let's look at the specific process itself. We'll draw some clear distinctions along the way. The brainwashing process affects both groups and individuals, but it starts with the mental state and social situation of the victim. This is the foundation everything else builds on. Not just anyone can be brainwashed. The ideal targets are those who are looking for something or trying to fill a gap in their lives. So who makes the best victims? People whose reality has been shaken up, often after a significant event. Take, for instance, many Western men who traveled to Syria to become terrorists. Many of them were driven by the loss of a close friend or family member. When their world loses all sense of meaning, brainwashers can step in and offer that certainty wrapped in a deadly ideology. Once a potential victim is identified, whether in person or online, the brainwashing process kicks off. Contrary to how movies often portray brainwashers as crazed and aggressive, the real-life ones are quite different. They tend to appear calm, friendly, and rational, people who look like they have their lives together, while the victim might not. Imagine someone who's homeless being befriended by a celebrity. That's how it feels the first time a victim meets their brainwasher. The brainwasher will focus on building trust and rapport. This often includes creating both deep and superficial bonds. Superficial connections might involve liking the same sports or foods. Deeper connections might be about shared experiences in their pasts. Brainwashers are skilled at faking these connections when necessary. If the victim shares a story about losing a loved one, you can bet the brainwasher suddenly has a similar tale to tell. But that's not all. Part of getting the victim invested involves giving gifts and favors. The brainwasher might treat them to meals or send them gadgets, anything that creates a sense of gratitude. This builds a feeling of indebtedness in the victim, pulling them further into the web. The manipulator breaks down any resistance the victim might have at first. One of the strongest examples of this comes from prisoner of war camps. When American soldiers have been captured, their captors often offer them American cigarettes and treat them with respect. This changes the victim's expectations and opens their mind for the brainwashing that will come next. After establishing a connection, the brainwasher begins presenting a perfect solution to the victim's problems. They do this casually at first to avoid pushing the victim away. This so-called utopian solution is really whatever ideology, be it terrorism, communism, or just a charismatic figure's need for attention, the brainwasher wants the victim to adopt. When done right, these initial steps leave the victim wanting to know more about the hinted solutions. Sometimes, the brainwasher will hold back information to make it feel like something the victim must earn. This creates a strong desire in the victim to seek out and accept what they're eventually told. The harmful ideas being planted will start to feel as refreshing as cold water on a hot day. As the victim starts to accept bits of their new belief system, the brainwasher is careful about sharing information at the right moments. This technique, known as milk before meat, involves introducing easy-to-accept ideas before revealing anything controversial. For example, a recruiter for religious terrorism might start by saying that God loves you, which is usually well accepted, and save the more extreme ideas, like God wants you to blow yourself up, for later. By then, the brainwashing has gone too far, and it's common to wonder why the victim keeps engaging with their new beliefs. Once the troubling ideas start to show, there are three main reasons why it happens. First, the victim, already feeling weak, starts to really like and trust their brainwasher. Second, they've put in a lot of time and even money into this situation. This is what's called the sunk cost fallacy. Nobody wants to just throw away all that effort and start over. Lastly, the brainwasher usually has gathered secret and personal information about the victim. This dirt can be held over their head, either subtly or directly. Now, you might wonder why someone would respond positively to threats. It's not always as straightforward as it seems. Often, these threats are wrapped in concern. For instance, if a victim shares sensitive details and then shows signs of backing out, the brainwasher might act worried. They might say, "If I can't help you, someone else needs to know what's been going on so they can take care of you when I'm not around." Because the victim has been manipulated into feeling a close bond with the brainwasher, this kind of pressure can come off as caring and kind. As a result, victims often feel compelled to stay on this brainwashing journey, even if it feels painful to leave. Every struggle they face seems epic, making staying the easier choice. In the end, the victim starts to believe that everything they've been taught is the truth. They genuinely think these views are their own and that they've come up with them by themselves. This leads to an ordinary person becoming a psychological captive to something they don't even know exists. The process of brainwashing is incredibly serious and impactful. It's bound to leave behind deep and lasting effects. One of the biggest changes after brainwashing is a loss of identity. Brainwashing has serious side effects. One common tactic in many cults and ideologies is changing a person's name after they've gone through initiation. This shift helps them completely detach from who they were before. Suddenly, They can think and do things they'd never have considered as their old selves fade away. When the process is done the right way, victims feel like their past identity was just a bad dream they've now woken up from. But brainwashing isn't just about altering opinions. If it were, it would be a much smaller problem. The real danger is that brainwashing transforms how people think, feel, and behave. People go from being normal, functioning members of society to brainwashed individuals, often seen as zombies, who are ready to commit acts like murder, rape, or even suicide. It sounds extreme, but it's true. For proof, just look at some examples. Members of certain cults will cut ties with their families, leave their jobs, give up all their money, and surrender their freedom to the group that has brainwashed them. They don't see this as a loss. Instead, they view their new life as a blessing. Another heartbreaking example involves young people being brainwashed by extremists to travel far away, driving cars packed with explosives into crowds of innocent people they've never met. Many of these young victims are well educated and come from stable backgrounds, yet they become tragically lost. The power of brainwashing is immense and can lead to devastating losses. Then there's the impact of PTSD. Those who manage to escape from intense brainwashing often show similar physical and mental scars as war veterans who have witnessed horrors on the battlefield. The aftermath of this trauma is severe. Research shows that being brainwashed can hurt someone just as much as a war. It's startling to learn that many who escape these situations often go back on their own. Even after breaking free, the effects of being controlled linger so deeply in their minds that they want to return. This is a classic case of Stockholm Syndrome. These escapees might even praise those who brainwashed them for a long time. They defend the beliefs they were taught while trapped. Now, let's talk about the dark triad. What is it? Think of it as an unholy trio in psychology. This concept ties together all the darker aspects of human behavior. It might sound like a movie title, but it's a real idea recognized by top psychologists. The dark triad identifies three of the most harmful personality traits: Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and narcissism. You might think you know what these mean. A psychopath is just a killer, right? And a narcissist just loves themselves a bit too much? Not quite. Understanding these concepts is crucial because their power becomes clear once you dive deeper. We'll break down each trait and show how they play out in everyday life. This chapter provides a thorough look at the dark triad and its significance in psychology. Let's start with Machiavellianism. This term comes from the political thinker Machiavelli. In his famous work, The Prince, he lays out ideas about power and influence that have shaped how people seek control throughout history. So, how does someone with Machiavellian traits show themselves? They're all about self-interest. They know how important image and appearance are, and they exercise power ruthlessly, prioritizing that over kindness or mercy. Put simply, Machiavellian folks are super strategic about life. They think through the consequences of their actions and how those moves will affect them. Their mindset can be boiled down to one main question: how does this benefit me, and how will others perceive me? Take former President Bill Clinton as an example. He acted on his own desires, but still managed to stay well-liked by the public. Compare that to many other politicians who fell into the same traps and faced public backlash. Now think about Barack Obama and George W. Bush. Many say Bush was the war president, while Obama was the peaceful one. But in reality, both were pretty similar in that regard. Obama just knew how to shape his image better than Bush did. This highlights a key lesson. Perception can be very different from reality. Now let's talk about psychopathy. It's a tough term to pin down, but it generally describes a psychological condition that includes traits like superficial charm, impulsivity, and a total lack of empathy or remorse. If someone has enough of these traits, they're called a psychopath, and these individuals can be incredibly dangerous. Forget the stereotype of a crazed killer. Real psychopaths often come off as charming and friendly at first, making it easy to let your guard down. Interestingly, some top business leaders often score high on psychopathy personality tests. It's shifting how people view the issue, seeing it as a more significant concern in society today. Psychopaths often rise to the top in various fields, whether it's in finance or, surprisingly, even in crime. Why? They don't get held back by the empathy or indecision that most people face. Now let's talk about narcissism. Many think of it as just loving oneself, and while that's somewhat right, it doesn't cover the full picture, especially when we view narcissism through the lens of the dark triad. You can love yourself without being a narcissist. So, what's the difference between having high self-esteem and being a full-blown narcissist? To be diagnosed as narcissistic, a person must show clear, ongoing traits. For instance, they often have an inflated sense of self-worth. They see their lives as extraordinary, sometimes even crucial to history, often believing they're the most important person around. Narcissists don't just feel special, they think they're superior. They act in ways that reflect this inflated ego. They typically struggle with accepting criticism or disagreement. And along with that, they have this constant need for approval and praise. Their lives are often set up to ensure they're surrounded by people who feed this need. Now that you've grasped the dark triad and the 3 core traits of dark psychology, it's vital to see how these traits play out in real life. Let's look at some behaviors tied to each trait. Starting with Machiavellianism. Machiavellian individuals are strategic schemers. They care deeply about their public image while pursuing their own interests ruthlessly. But spotting Machiavellians can be tricky. They excel at hiding their real intentions and actions from the public eye. You'll often run into classic Machiavellian behaviors in everyday life. For most people who aren't clinically Machiavellian, their public image usually reflects who they really are. Sure, everyone polishes their appearance a bit when they're out and about, but overall, most folks show a genuine version of themselves. Machiavellian individuals, however, play a different game. They create a clear divide between their true selves and how they present to the world. For instance, there are many serial killers who escape detection simply because their public persona is so different from what we think a murderer should look like. Consider a religious leader who's always volunteering and helping others, yet, in secret, is committing terrible acts of violence and abuse. Their public behavior masks their true intentions perfectly. This disconnect isn't only found in extreme cases like serial murder. Look at the business world, where you'll find leaders who ruthlessly cut jobs and prioritize profit over people. The smartest among them can even convince others that their actions are necessary or kind. These leaders are like role models for those who only look out for their own interests while pretending to care about others. Now think about a newcomer at a regular office. If they aren't Machiavellian, they'll see their coworkers as people to connect with, some good, some bad, just like them. But a Machiavellian newcomer? They see everyone as a resource or a piece in a game they can use or exploit. Rather than seeing their coworkers as fellow humans, they view them as tools to manage, manipulate, or eliminate. This understanding of how they're perceived is a big reason why Machiavellian people are so aware of their public image. The key to influencing others and taking advantage of situations comes from a core Machiavellian idea found in The Prince. It suggests that keeping promises only matters if it benefits oneself. At first, this might make you think Machiavellians are just untrustworthy, but that's a big mistake. When they break a promise, they often manage to look noble or even admirable. Think about Barack Obama before he was elected. He promised to shut down Guantanamo Bay. Did he keep that promise? No, but instead he managed to portray himself as a good guy caught in a tough system, not a politician who broke his word. That's the major difference between a crafty Machiavellian and an ordinary person who can't be counted on. Another trait of Machiavellians is instilling fear in those around them. This idea also comes from The Prince, which says you should try to be both feared and loved. But if you can't do both, it's better to be feared. This idea connects to how Machiavellians create distinct public and private images. The ideal Machiavellian can inspire fear and loyalty from people who claim to love them more than they fear them. Now, when it comes to recognizing psychopaths, it's important to know what truly defines them, rather than what we think we know. Unless you're a trained therapist with close access to someone, you probably won't spot a psychopath just by theory. It's crucial to notice their outward behavior, because that's often the only clue before it's too late. One common sign of a psychopath is charm. But remember, it's usually superficial charm, not the genuine kind. If you think of someone in your life who had real charm, you'd notice they displayed positive traits behind their behavior. True kindness and a genuine wish to make people happy, not something you'll find in a psychopath. They can fake charm, looking attractive and showing warmth and interest. But here's the catch. Their charm is all part of a game. In their minds, it goes like this. If I charm this person, they will feel a certain way, and I'll benefit from it. It's all a calculated act, without any real feeling behind it. Another key trait of psychopaths is lying. While lying alone doesn't make someone a psychopath, when it comes with other traits, it can signal the disorder. For them, lying is as natural as breathing is for healthy individuals. They can shape the truth to fit whatever they need at that moment. Plus, they don't give off usual signs of deceit because they lack any emotional ties, no shame, guilt, or excitement over their lies. To them, lying is just a tool. Then there's the absence of remorse, a significant difference between psychopaths and others. Many people who commit terrible acts like murder feel deep guilt and shame afterward. Some even take their own lives because of it. But for psychopaths, it's not a choice. They just can't feel remorse. Asking a psychopath to experience regret is like asking a deaf person to hear music. Their thinking doesn't revolve around right or wrong. Instead, they see the world in terms of what's useful or not. Guilt, that's completely foreign to them. If they feel anything close to guilt, it's usually frustration that their actions didn't meet their own twisted standards. Lastly, lack of impulse control is a hallmark of psychopathy. While most people have built-in checks that stop them from acting impulsively, psychopaths have none of those safeguards. When a psychopath sees a chance to take advantage, they jump right in. No second guessing. This could mean hurting someone they want to hurt, stealing something they want to steal, or worse. This kind of cold, quick action is what makes psychopaths so effective in places like the military or business. They make decisions without hesitation, something many people struggle with, and that can hold them back in life. Empathy is our ability to feel another's pain. But for psychopaths, empathy doesn't exist. Other people are as real to them as stick figures on paper. Those lives mean nothing unless they serve a purpose for the psychopath. If something bad happens to someone else, a psychopath thinks about how it impacts them. How can they use that situation to their advantage? No real feelings involved. Now, narcissism shows up early on. One of the first signs is a constant daydreaming about power and status. Many narcissists recall childhood fantasies where they're adored and worshipped. While most people might fantasize about success occasionally, a narcissist truly believes they deserve that glory, seeing any lack of it as a personal attack. They believe they are above others. Unlike most people, who experience ups and downs in their self-image based on achievements, narcissists expect constant praise. They think they should always receive admiration, no matter what. This inflated sense of self-worth affects how they interact with the world, leading to two main behaviors. They crave agreement and praise, and they despise criticism. Compliments fuel their ego like oxygen, while any hint of criticism feels like poison. To understand extreme narcissism, imagine a dictator who isolates themselves. They demand constant worship from everyone around them. They have a stronghold over the creation of statues that look like them, demanding total submission and allegiance. Any sign of dissent is met with swift and harsh punishment. North Korea is a glaring example of extreme narcissism, where leaders expect to be worshipped like deities. Anyone who dares to voice an opinion that strays from the official narrative faces execution or torture. Sadism, though shocking, is a crucial detail in understanding the dark side of psychology. Researchers propose a dark tetrad, adding sadistic personality disorder as the fourth pillar. Sadism can be the toughest dark trait to grasp because it's something most people find hard to relate to. While many can see hints of Machiavellianism, psychopathy, or narcissism in themselves or others, sadism feels alien. It's defined as finding pleasure in others' pain, which adds a disturbing twist to the already unsettling dark triad traits. For instance, if a Machiavellian leader causes suffering, they do so without regret, but also without enjoyment. Enter sadism, and you introduce the troubling idea that someone might actually take pleasure, sometimes even sexual pleasure, from cruel acts. The unique thing about sadism? It's cruelty for amusement's sake, not for a greater cause or a loss of control. Sadists actively seek out others' suffering simply for their own entertainment, much like fans watching a sports game. When it comes to seduction, it's clear why this topic deserves special attention. Most people have seen or experienced someone using dark psychological tricks to attract a partner. Whether in dating or relationships, many have relied on some secretive influence to get what they want. The drive for intimacy is incredibly strong, and when it goes unmet, it can lead to significant stress and unhappiness. Conversely, some of the most renowned stories in romance are tangled with these darker motivations. Throughout history, many notable figures have openly satisfied their sexual desires. Kings and emperors, for instance, often had access to the most beautiful women as part of their privilege. Take King Henry VIII of England, for example. His craving for women was so intense that he actually started a new religious movement just to marry multiple wives. He had total control over them, and sadly, many paid the ultimate price: execution. Henry VIII stands out as one example of how seduction and strong desire play into dark psychology. This focus on seduction shows it's a major element of the field. If you don't grasp how seduction ties into dark psychology, you'll only scratch the surface of the subject. But is every form of seduction a dark psychological tactic? Not really. Seduction usually involves one person chasing another. Most folks who aren't skilled in dark manipulation tend to fumble their way through, making awkward moves. Think about classic romantic comedies where a bumbling guy keeps messing up trying to win the girl. A true master of psychological seduction is more like Ryan Gosling in Crazy Stupid Love or Will Smith in Hitch. They know exactly what they want and how to achieve it. As you'll soon learn in this chapter, dark psychology within seduction isn't automatically good or bad. It really depends on how it affects the person being seduced. There's a part of this chapter dedicated to exploring the outcomes of moral versus immoral seduction. So how can this chapter benefit you? At the very least, it'll deepen your understanding of dark psychology. Any book that skips the topic of seduction just isn't complete. Plus, you can use this knowledge in practical ways. Whether you want to shield yourself and your loved ones from dark seducers or become one yourself is up to you. This chapter will alter how you view dating forever. Now, one of the biggest questions people ask when they first encounter dark psychological seduction is, why? Why do some choose this route for attraction? Isn't it better to simply go on normal dates? Pursuing someone slowly and genuinely is key to grasping the impact of dark seduction. Let's picture someone navigating their love life without any tricks from the world of dark psychology. We'll call this person a conventional dater. A conventional dater invests a lot of time and money before they ever get intimate. They might even marry and publicly vow to be faithful, come what may. But later on, this dater, now a conventional spouse, might discover that life isn't what they pictured. They rushed into the wedding and it didn't meet their expectations. Now both partners face a tough choice: stick with a dull and unsatisfying marriage or cheat. Who would want either option? In contrast, there's the satisfied seducer. This person wields dark psychology to get what they want in romance. No one is irreplaceable to them because they know they can always find someone new. This mindset lets them live freely, without neediness. If a satisfied seducer decides to settle down, they do it from a place of abundance, not desperation. This leads to happier, more fulfilling marriages. So why does a satisfied seducer find so much success in dating? It's all about understanding powerful principles and mastering the techniques that come with them. Throughout this book, you've seen how dark psychology applies to many areas of life. Why should dating be any different? One big edge that users of dark psychology have over others is their insight into the human mind. Think of a conventional dater as a guy clumsily wandering through love, accepting whatever comes his way. Meanwhile, the skilled seducer is like a sniper, zeroing in on exactly what they desire. Anyone who tries out dark psychology principles in the dating scene is likely to be blown away by the results. Experiences change when they gain a sense of control and confidence, replacing feelings of doubt and insecurity. Surprisingly, those using dark psychology not only feel better about their own outcomes, but they also notice that the people around them are having a much better time too. This happens because dark psychology teaches the seducer exactly what people want in the romantic realm and shows them how to deliver it. Many who first apply their dark psychological insights to dating call it a real eureka moment. Using these techniques allows them to finally pursue what they've always wanted and fulfill their deepest desires. So, is dark seduction evil? A common question for newcomers is whether these techniques are immoral. Like many things in life, dark psychological seduction isn't strictly good or bad. It all depends on how it is employed. People generally use these skills for one of three reasons: to help the ones they seduce, to hurt them, or just to benefit themselves. It's hard for some to believe anyone would enter the dark seduction realm to help the other person. Aren't all seducers selfish? Not necessarily. A well-known idea in this world is to leave people better than you found them. Those who believe in this principle argue that no one has to lose during seduction. Both the seducer and the person being seduced can enjoy the encounter without anyone getting hurt. So, how does someone embrace a seductive lifestyle while ensuring others feel valued? A key aspect of ethical seduction is to avoid lying or misleading. Insincere individuals often make grand promises only to deliver nothing. Skilled seducers don't make promises they can't keep. Instead, they immerse the person they're seducing in the moment, allowing them to fully enjoy the experience. Some people have selfish motives. They only care about meeting their own needs and desires. They won't hesitate to mislead, hurt, or harm those they're trying to win over. This kind of uncaring narcissism can strangely appeal to others who keep falling into patterns of being used over and over again. When someone goes into seduction just for their own satisfaction, it often leads to trouble. Those who engage in this without a carefree attitude might find themselves facing unexpected consequences, like unwanted children and the burden of child support. They also risk the wrath of those they've carelessly tossed aside. Some who are too reckless in their seductive ways have even lost their lives to jealous lovers. We've talked about two types of dark psychological seduction: those who want to help and those who seek to harm. Now let's dive into a third type. This is the person who is solely focused on their own experiences. For them, dark psychological seduction is a way to boost self-growth. It pushes them to break through comfort zones and explore what's possible in dating. This journey forces them to face their strengths and weaknesses head-on. Those like this tend to enjoy bending social rules more than the actual romance they achieve. It's a path similar to someone transforming their health through committed effort and self-improvement. For them, the effect on the people they're seducing doesn't matter as much as the impact of their dark seduction on themselves. Now you have a grasp of what dark psychological seduction is and why people choose it. You know these individuals can be good, bad, or indifferent. So with motives and intentions understood, the question remains: how do they actually pull it off? Most seducers operate with a guiding approach and a set of specific tactics that frame their efforts. This exploration of different philosophies reveals familiar concepts from dark psychology, particularly in the realm of seduction. Here, psychological ideas shift from theory to real-life application. One method of dark seduction follows a strict, organized process. Seducers believe they've mapped out the steps of attraction with incredible precision, almost like a flowchart. They view psychological seduction as something predictable and repeatable. Their methods tend to work for them and others who grasp and apply them correctly. These seducers often use a series of stages. They guide their target through various emotions, like moving from interest to attraction, then to excitement. They see this process as a checklist that leads to their ultimate goal. The strength of this structured approach is that it provides a sense of certainty. Those who follow it know exactly what to do next. There's no need to second guess, as it becomes as routine as driving or brushing your teeth. But there's a downside. When a person doesn't respond as expected, a structured seducer might struggle. They can forget that people aren't just predictable robots. They're complex individuals. In contrast, we have the natural approach to seduction. This method focuses on developing genuine emotions within the seducer and expressing those feelings freely. Someone using this method takes the time to understand their own emotions and how to enhance them. They believe they can't help others feel good until they feel good themselves. Then there's NLP and hypnotic seduction, a specific branch of dark psychological seduction. Unlike the structured or natural approaches, NLP and hypnotic seduction focus on triggering specific emotional states in the target and creating connections from there. The hypnotic seducer uses techniques from NLP or neuro-linguistic programming to tap into someone's strong positive feelings. They help the person enjoy these emotions and then connect those feelings to themselves. By using a specific gesture or tone, the seducer can recreate that intense pleasure. But let's be real, using hypnotic seduction regularly isn't easy. Most people get defensive when faced with unusual methods. NLP makes seduction feel less normal and can raise some eyebrows. Still, for those who connect with it, the bond is often much stronger. Some psychological seducers flip the traditional dating script. Usually, men are seen as the ones pursuing, while women are more passive. Turning that around can lead to surprising results. Some men discover that embracing a role where they're seen as the prize feels refreshing. Women also take advantage of this shift, boldly taking the lead. Many men get taken aback by a confident woman pursuing them, and various women feel empowered in a way they've never felt in dating before. Some individuals dive into psychological seduction as a way to break free from the limits of traditional relationships. This approach might involve being open to polyamory or other variations suited to their needs. By mastering these dark psychological techniques, seducers can chase their true desires honestly and effectively. Now, the challenge is figuring out how to put these concepts into real-life actions. The indirect approach is a vital strategy in the realm of seduction. A common error many make in dating is starting with a cringy icebreaker when trying to connect with someone they're attracted to. Comments like, "nice eyes" or "you look good" are so overused they come off as shallow. Women have likely heard these phrases a million times, making them instantly disinterested. When someone uses a tired line like that, it shows they lack personality. On the flip side, an indirect opener brings something fresh to the table. This kind of opener kicks off a conversation without any obvious romantic intent. It often takes the form of an engaging question. For example, a seducer might ask, "Can you help me settle a debate? Who lies more, men or women?" This approach ignites a dialogue and portrays the seducer as intriguing, focused on having a genuine conversation instead of hitting on someone. Another plus for using indirect openers is that they lessen the fear of rejection. You're not putting yourself on the line with these questions. There's nothing to reject if you're not making an explicit offer. Social proof is another key tactic in the landscape of dark psychological seduction. People who are popular seem more appealing than those who are not. It's just human nature to think that if someone is well-liked, there must be something great about them. Nobody wants to end up with a lonely, creepy person with no friends. So, how can you leverage social proof in psychological seduction? Showing beats telling every time. Many stumble by boasting about their popularity, which can come off as bragging or trying too hard. Instead, just being seen with a dynamic group at a bar or club sends a message about your social value without screaming for attention. One sneaky way to use social proof involves setting the scene in a lively bar or club. They notice a girl they want to talk to, but instead of going straight to her, they chat up someone else first. This breaks the ice and makes it easier to approach their original interest. It also creates a sense of competition between the two women, adding a bit of excitement. Most daters don't realize this tactic. They often come off as too eager or available. Take the guy who sits quietly in a bar while a girl totally ignores him, or the woman who tolerates disrespect from her partner. What stands out is being a challenge. This can look different in many ways. One approach is to walk away if the target gets a bit cheeky. The seducer might jokingly say, "I'm done," and turn to leave. That unexpected move can really impress and attract someone who appreciates self-confidence. Another way to be challenging is through playful teasing. Many people go overboard with compliments or laugh at everything, trying to be nice, but they end up bland. A clever tease can create excitement and catch the interest of the person they like. We're all drawn to what's fresh and thrilling, especially in romance. That's why cliché pickup lines are such a joke. they're simply boring and ineffective. To stand out in a positive way, one needs to recognize what others do wrong. Once that's clear, the seducer can think about how those missteps make the target feel. With that understanding, they can move in for the win. Think about how to do things differently from everyone else. You want to stand out in a way that gets a positive response. One simple way to do this is by dressing a bit better or more interestingly than others around you. If a place feels really casual, just a slight upgrade in your outfit can make a big difference. No one's saying you have to don a tuxedo at a sports bar, but putting in that extra bit of effort can really pay off. Another useful trick in this realm of attraction is to take charge. A lot of people are fine with being led. Being indecisive, that's pretty unattractive. You can show you're decisive by moving around a space, suggesting new spots to check out, or being willing to disagree when necessary. Many guys miss this point and end up being wishy-washy, like a leaf blowing in the wind, instead of strong and confident. No one wants to be around someone who can't make up their mind. Understanding how to take charge naturally leads to knowing how to make things happen. If you chat with women, they'll share stories about guys who hesitated during those key moments, like the first kiss or a romantic step forward. A woman's uncertainty can be off-putting for men too. Who really wants to date someone unsure of what they want? Being decisive and ready to act is crucial for a successful connection. Some people even tap into darker traits, like aspects of psychopathy, to boost their romantic pursuits. A key trait of someone with psychopathic tendencies is their fearlessness in interactions. While most people get held back by the fear of rejection, these individuals have a different approach. So how can someone get over that fear of rejection? It's straightforward. Face rejection again and again, and realize it's not as bad as it seems. Over time, those skilled in psychological seduction come to understand that it's always better to be the one who takes the lead. It's better to be someone who tried and stumbled than to be the one who never dared at all. Trying leads to its own rewards. As someone puts themselves out there, they start to shed that initial nervousness and doubt. Those who practice this technique of facing rejection head-on soon discover that the more they embrace it, the less they actually fear it. Confidence grows when meeting new people, and with it, that sense of calm. The more someone experiences rejection up front, the less they'll worry about it in the future. This shift can lead to real success and fewer rejections down the line. Give it a go and see how it works. Now, you have a grasp of the core ideas of dark psychology and how they play out in different scenarios. This knowledge is powerful, but it's not enough on its own. By diving into real-world case studies, you'll see these concepts come to life. These stories are not just informative, they're compelling in their own right, revealing some of the most interesting and unusual minds we've encountered. Each case study is crafted to be as helpful as possible for anyone learning about dark psychology. You'll find key facts about each case, followed by clear psychological insights, linking back to the concepts in this book to deepen your understanding. The cases you'll explore here are extreme examples of dark psychology throughout history. They're shared not for glamorization or judgment, but for learning opportunities. Take Ted Bundy, for instance. He's infamous as one of the most notorious serial killers on record. His story is a classic example of a textbook psychopath. One intriguing point about Bundy is how extensively he's been covered in media, thanks to his readiness to discuss his crimes through interviews. Often, with high-profile criminals, the media hype overshadows the seriousness of their actions. But that's not the case here. While Bundy was charged with 30 murders, he has suggested he may be connected to nearly 100 in total. The exact number remains a mystery, leaving many analysts puzzled. Some people think Bundy might not even know how many people he killed during his time on death row. After his sentencing, a lot of material emerged about his psychology and what drove him to commit those terrible acts. There's been plenty of analysis after his death, aiming to look at his crimes and the man behind them in a calm and objective way. It's all part of trying to get a grip on one of the worst murderers ever caught. There are several details about Bundy's crimes that have become examples in the study of psychopathic serial killers, including their motivations and methods. We'll dive into some striking elements of Bundy's actions before breaking down his life for insights on the dark psychological principles this book highlights. One notable thing about Bundy's long spree of murders is how it changed over time. He admitted that at first he was messy and took advantage of easy opportunities. Over time, he chillingly honed his skills, becoming more careful, elaborate, and methodical in his approach. It's tough to really understand Bundy's mind, though, because he was great at hiding the truth. People often described him as a changeling or a shapeshifter, because he could change his appearance and offer misleading bits about his life to fit whatever he needed at the moment. Despite his ability to mask his true self and intentions, Bundy's tricks give us crucial insights into the nature of deceptive psychopathic killers. Now, let's summarize the key lessons related to Ted Bundy and dark psychology. Many books have been written to help us understand Bundy's case, but instead of spending hours on them, you can gather the key insights right here to boost your grasp of dark psychology. Deception was one of Bundy's biggest strengths, and it showed in how he interacted with others, both during and after his crime spree. He could trick people both physically and mentally. Bundy clearly grasped how crucial perception and public image really are. Many who met him found him charming and good-looking. That's a typical trait of psychopaths. They can project charm and desirability while lacking any real substance inside. The emotional coldness of men like Bundy becomes obvious when you think about it. This is someone who could make victims feel drawn to him just moments before he would attack and kill them in some of the most brutal ways imaginable. Bundy's skills in understanding what drives and biases people are apparent in what he said and did. Take his interview with James Dobson, a moral crusader, right before his execution. Knowing Dobson was against porn, Bundy managed to spin his motivations as being solely tied to early exposure to it. He expertly played to what Dobson wanted to hear, trying to steer the focus away from his horrific actions. He even hinted at demonic possession, which would catch the ear of Dobson's Christian followers. His ability to detach from his actions shone through, too. He was notorious for dropping cryptic clues about where he hid bodies, using them as bargaining chips to buy himself more time before facing execution. In his mind, a dead child's body was just a tool for personal advantage. You can also see the high intelligence that many psychopaths have in how Bundy operated. He stayed free for a long time because he understood law enforcement's methods at a time when they weren't as common knowledge as today. Bundy displayed strong sadistic and narcissistic traits by torturing his victims, taking photos of their bodies, and even referring to himself in the third person. One key feature of narcissists is their distorted view of their own status and worth. It's often far beyond what's justified in reality. This inflated self-image can trap them in lifestyles and situations they consider beneath them. Sometimes, a person with a narcissistic personality is born into a situation where they can fully express that narcissism. Take history's dictators, for instance. They had the power and control that matched their enormous egos. One standout example is Sapir Murat Niyazov, who became the leader of Turkmenistan during a time when Soviet influence was fading. He grabbed that chance to elevate himself to a position of absolute power and declared he would be president for life. From that point on, he made some truly outrageous decisions that showcased his narcissism. One of his most infamous moves? Renaming the months of the year to celebrate himself. He even made bizarre laws based on his whims, like controlling how people looked and changing the names of everyday items to what he thought they should be. Perhaps the peak of his grandiosity was when he created a religious text that was placed on the same level as established scriptures, like the Holy Quran. Other dictators, like Colonel Gaddafi of Libya, have done similarly, producing texts that people revered far too much. Then there's North Korea, a more recognized and equally chilling example of dictator dynasties. Kim Jong-un and his father, Kim Jong-il, are treated as gods in their tightly controlled nation. The citizens' understanding of reality is warped by this political cult. For instance, Kim Jong-il is famed for getting a hole-in-one on every golf hole during his first game. North Koreans are so deeply indoctrinated that they believe such wild claims without question. So, What do these extreme examples tell us about narcissism? The traits we see in these dictators show how controlling and meticulous narcissists can be when they hold enough power to do whatever they want. Look at North Korea. Kim Jong-un exemplifies this behavior perfectly. There are stories about a ruler who had his own uncle executed just for yawning in a meeting. Imagine that. He was even armed with a weapon that could take down fighter jets. This shows how narcissists crave compliments and can turn angry when they don't get them. Dictators often write grand religious or philosophical texts, expecting them to be treated as sacred. They truly believe they stand among the greatest figures in history, like prophets and saints. If you grasp just how deeply they hold this belief, their outrageous writings start to make a perverse kind of sense. Take Hitler, for instance. He's seen as a modern Machiavelli, with many parallels between Machiavelli's ideas in The Prince and Hitler's actions. You could argue that Hitler exemplifies what a modern Machiavellian leader looks like. First, let's explore how his thoughts and actions mirror Machiavelli's teachings. One striking similarity is the idea from The Prince that peace is just a temporary pause in an endless war. Hitler was all about conquest, dreaming of a world ruled by his totalitarian regime. He was the closest to Machiavelli's idea of a relentless warrior leader we've seen lately. Machiavelli believed in bending reality to achieve political goals. Hitler's notorious doctrine involved the persecution and extermination of the Jewish population in Germany. A key moment in his pursuit of this horrific agenda was the Reichstag fire, a controversial event. Some debate whether Hitler set this up to advance his anti-Jewish and anti-communist goals, but plenty of evidence suggests he did just that. Regardless of the specifics, this incident is a classic example of using a Machiavellian false flag to serve a dark purpose. One of the main takeaways from Machiavelli's political theories is that power itself is a goal worth pursuing, no matter what it takes to maintain it. Machiavelli believed that the ends justify the means when it comes to leadership. A famous case in point is Adolf Hitler. He knew exactly how to play the political game and worked hard to win the hearts and minds of the German people. Some even suggest he might have escaped to Argentina after World War II, living among other Nazis. While it's tough to prove that theory, it does show how fiercely he clung to power, even when faced with death. Another big idea connecting Hitler to Machiavelli is this: it's better to be loved than feared, but if you can't be loved, then it's better to be feared. It's easy to forget just how much loyalty and even adoration Hitler inspired in people back then. Since World War II, we've come to see him as the embodiment of evil, almost like a figure of Satan. But in his time, he had an incredible knack for stirring up both love and fear. Just watch recordings of his speeches. You can feel that mix of awe and terror in the crowd. When we dig into dark psychology, one key Machiavellian principle from The Prince stands out. If it's not in your interest, don't keep your word. Machiavelli stresses the importance of at least appearing truthful, even if the reality is different. Hitler was a prime example of this in action. He often made grand promises that were impossible to keep, yet he maintained an image of someone dedicated to fulfilling them. This really highlights how politicians can twist the truth for public perception, using it to great psychological effect. Plus, another Machiavellian tactic we see from Hitler was how he consolidated his power. Hitler was ruthless in his drive to take Germany back to its glory days. He got rid of anyone who challenged him, whether they were former allies or people from different backgrounds. This push to tighten his grip on power allowed him to wield significant influence. His actions show that Machiavellian ideas really can be seen in action, even today. A chilling example of dark psychology is Hitler's enjoyment of sadism, particularly evident in how he treated those in concentration camps. These unfortunate individuals faced severe torture, cruel medical experiments, and horrific deaths by starvation or gas. Now, let's talk about brainwashing, especially how terrorists use it to manipulate minds. Many might think this only pertains to groups like Al-Qaeda or ISIS, but there are terrorists across the entire political spectrum. They can be driven by anything from religious beliefs to political ideologies, whether right-leaning or left-leaning. What connects them all is their knack for using brainwashing to recruit and keep followers. It's alarming how effective these tactics are. Young people from Western countries are constantly lured away by groups operating in the Middle East. So, how do these organizations grab hold of minds so effectively? They rely on deliberate, controlled brainwashing methods. In today's world, the internet has changed the game. Where brainwashing used to happen in person, now terrorists can connect with people anywhere in the world. The slick propaganda videos they produce are just one of the tools they use in this high-tech age of brainwashing. Even though they have new methods, they still utilize age-old strategies that have worked for years. The way brainwashing works hasn't really changed over time. Today, though, terrorist groups are using new technology to put these tactics into action. This is a huge issue, and we can't underestimate it. With the internet, these organizations can reach anyone, anywhere. No country or family is immune to the risk of brainwashing, something that happens way too often. It can lead young people, full of potential, to leave everything behind and get caught up in a foreign conflict. It can even push unstable individuals to carry out attacks in their own neighborhoods. The internet has become a modern tool for classic brainwashing techniques. Finding vulnerable targets is simpler than ever, especially since young people share so much about their lives online. Anyone, regardless of their motives, can easily identify someone who might be susceptible to these dangerous influences. Thanks to undercover journalists and their investigations, we now have a clearer picture of how these brainwashing tactics work. Once a target is chosen, they're usually paired with a member of the terror group who can connect with them effectively. This recruiter will work carefully and deliberately. They keep any disturbing aspects of the group hidden until the target shows a willingness to explore their ideas. Many modern terrorist organizations cleverly present their ideology as the perfect cure for their target's personal struggles. Whether they're promoting Islamic extremism or right-wing views, their approaches are similar. They like to portray a flawed society and offer their ideology as the only solution. These compelling narratives are amplified through videos and images online, allowing these groups to share a skewed version of reality. Terrorist groups, just like classic brainwashing techniques, make their victims feel grateful for their involvement. There are plenty of stories about young people full of potential who, after spending time with a terrorist brainwasher, start expressing gratitude for this new perspective on life. It's a common misconception that these extremist groups only use the internet for their recruitment. In reality, they view the internet as just one tool among many. Their ultimate aim is to meet these individuals in person and bring them into their offline world. When victims move to offline contact with the group, the intensity of brainwashing can ramp up quickly. These modern terror organizations know that the idealized vision they present online falls apart when recruits meet the group in real life. To keep them tied to this new world, they often push victims to form strong bonds, like marrying fellow members. These connections can maintain their grip even after the shining dream proves to be a lie. Then there's Rasputin, the infamous mad monk. No discussion of dark psychology would be complete without mentioning him. His brand of psychological influence left a lasting impact and set the stage for many charismatic leaders that came later. So, who was Rasputin? He was a spiritual figure who gained influence over Russia's elite in his time. He struck a fascinating balance, mixing piety with sensuality, appealing to almost everyone in different ways. Those drawn to religion were captivated by his seemingly miraculous healing powers, while those seeking sensual pleasures admired his character too. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of Rasputin was his ability to be both a devil and an angel at once. Many elements of Rasputin's psychological grip can still be seen in today's use of hypnosis. He was one of the first and most infamous people to put others into a trance-like state. So, what were these rumored hypnotic and healing powers? It's said that Rasputin could bring deep calm, ease, and relaxation to his victims. In fact, he was a pioneer of sorts for modern faith healers. Stories of him soothing the pains of the Russian elite only added to his mysterious aura and the sway he held over those around him. Rasputin also connects deeply with today's concepts of covert emotional manipulation. What made his impact so striking was that he didn't seem to actively try to control anyone. Instead, He gave off an almost magical energy that people simply fell for. You might recognize this as a hallmark of covert emotional manipulation today. When you study Rasputin, you see important lessons about charismatic influence. Many modern manipulators draw followers by projecting an air of special knowledge. This was even truer in Rasputin's time, when people relied less on rational thought and science. It made his image as a divine, mystical figure even more believable. Those studying dark psychology can spot similar patterns in today's charismatic leaders who pretend to be spiritually enlightened to gain power. The connection between dark psychology and sexuality is clear too. Like many throughout history, Rasputin used his psychological influence to lead a life of hedonism. It's no surprise that cult leaders often indulge with their followers. Rasputin is a notorious example, but he certainly wasn't the first to use this tactic. The fact that MKUltra even exists is pretty shocking. What are we talking about here? We're diving into the CIA's intense and long-standing effort to figure out mind control techniques. It might sound like something out of a sci-fi movie or the thoughts of someone paranoid in a tinfoil hat, but it's real. Research it yourself, and you'll see the program was genuine and severe. Even the most advanced nations recognize the power of brainwashing and try to use it for their own purposes. If you think a secret CIA project on mind control is hard to believe, wait until you hear the details. The CIA looked into a whole bunch of mind control methods, from physical tactics like sleep deprivation to psychological ones like identity erasing, and even pharmaceutical approaches like truth serums. You'd think a program like this would be carried out in a proper and ethical way, right? Wrong. This program was completely illegal and unethical. One of the most shocking aspects? They gave LSD and other drugs to unsuspecting U.S. citizens. There's a theory out there suggesting the CIA hypnotically influenced a man named Sirhan into killing a member of the Kennedy family. Some credible witnesses, including psychologists, claim Sirhan appeared to be under some hypnotic state during the murder and trial. He says he can't remember anything that happened and doesn't recall making the statements he did. Interestingly, the CIA's research into mind control paved the way for more legitimate methods of influence. For instance, MKUltra blended drugs with psychological techniques to manipulate targets. Nowadays, some psychologists use this blend to help treat psychological issues instead of just controlling people. Moreover, MKUltra offers insights into Machiavellian tactics, showing just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Political influence is still very much alive in today's America. The U.S. likes to present itself as a country that stands firm on its values of freedom and equality. But MKUltra reveals a different story. It shows that the CIA is willing to play a double game, saying one thing publicly while doing another behind the scenes. When it suited their interests, they tested dangerous psychedelic drugs on American citizens without their consent or even their knowledge. If any details about Sirhan's connection to MKUltra are ever confirmed, it could open up some chilling possibilities. Such evidence would prove that hypnotism can actually be used to push someone into carrying out an assassination. Some modern-day attempts have been made to either prove or disprove these methods. Hypnotist Darren Brown claims he's replicated what MKUltra accomplished, but his assertions might just be tricks of illusion. Con artists are known for their dark psychological skills. It's telling that they go by the second part of their name. Many researchers are often shocked to find out that these con artists have operated based on principles of influence that modern science is only just now catching up to. A lot of history's most notorious con artists were actually masters at dark psychological manipulation. Take the Ponzi scheme, for instance. Named after Charles Ponzi, he ran a huge fraudulent investment scheme. One remarkable aspect of his original scam was how he projected confidence to get himself out of tight spots. When a group of angry investors showed up at his office, instead of panicking, Charles stayed calm and collected. He managed to soothe the crowd with his tranquil and inspiring presence. Faith healers share some similarities with Ponzi. They exploit people's vulnerabilities for their own gain. While Ponzi took advantage of his victims' desperation for money, faith healers prey on their need for hope and healing. Some people take a really terrible route by preying on others' illnesses and pain. They use their victims' hope for a spiritual experience to manipulate them. The consequences of falling for a fake faith healer can be really serious. There are many heartbreaking stories of individuals who thought they were healed after meeting one. Because of this false sense of healing, they stopped taking their medicine or did something risky out of trust and belief. Tragically, some people have lost their lives due to these choices. Then there's Gregor McGregor, a notorious con artist from history. He's one of the first known figures who sold non-existent things to wealthy people. You might have heard of crooks selling famous landmarks, like the Eiffel Tower or Brooklyn Bridge, to gullible rich folks. Well, McGregor is the original mastermind behind this sort of scam. He pretended to be noble, claiming to come from a group of islands that didn't even exist. He got rich folks to fund trips to these islands he knew were just a fantasy. So why does McGregor matter in the study of dark psychology? It's because he was incredibly persuasive. He skillfully played on his victims' egos and emotions. Even after they tried and failed to visit these fake islands, they defended him to the media. This shows just how advanced his manipulative skills were. There are a lot of insights into dark psychology that we can draw from these con artists. Their ability to influence people is so strong that even modern psychologists are amazed at how they used psychological principles long before they were scientifically validated. Take Ponzi, for example. He found victims with weaknesses and ruthlessly exploited them without a hint of doubt or hesitation. Ponzi illustrates how confidence can make a scam more likely to succeed. The best con artists keep their fraudulent schemes running smoothly, always appearing calm and in control. For decades, many have remained unaware. Faith healers show just how suggestible people's minds can be. Their convincing ways lead victims to make harmful medical choices, and sometimes, tragically, even death. These healers highlight why folks fall prey to charismatic cults. When deep spiritual beliefs meet real needs, like the desire for relief from pain, people can take extreme actions. McGregor shares a humorous take on the effectiveness of playing on people's egos. Even when his wealthy investors got duped, lost money, and felt foolish, they still defended him publicly. What can we learn from this? If a victim holds high status and thinks well of themselves, they are less likely to admit they've been scammed. They might not even recognize the truth about what happened in their own heads. This shows how narcissism can be turned against someone. Now let's talk about psychopaths. Since the term emerged, it's often carried a negative vibe. One of the early psychologists, Bowlby, linked it to a lack of maternal care in childhood, suggesting these individuals would grow up to be delinquent criminals, burdening society. But Andy McNabb offers a fascinating twist. Many might label him a good psychopath. Abandoned as a baby and tangled in petty crime, he joined the army as a young man. From there, he climbed the ranks to become part of Britain's elite SAS. After leaving the military, McNabb transformed into a successful author, playwright, and entrepreneur. Dr. Dutton, a prominent British psychologist, worked with McNabb on a book that looked at how psychopathic traits can actually be beneficial in certain situations. This idea flips the script on dark psychology, often seen negatively, to reveal its potential advantages. Together, Dutton and McNabb pointed out areas where these traits might actually shine. Psychopathy can actually bring some real advantages. Take emergency situations, for instance. Most people freeze up, but psychopaths tend to stay calm. Why? Because fear doesn't control them the same way it does others. McNabb pointed out that psychopaths can turn down their fear response on command, letting them handle intense situations that would freak out most of us. Fields like hedge fund management are another spot where psychopaths shine. Their impulsive nature lets them make risky decisions without second-guessing. In the wrong hands, that could mean danger. But in the right environment, it can translate to major financial gains. McNabb and Dutton's work opens a lot of doors in understanding dark psychology. By blending research with the real-life experiences of someone who's used psychopathic traits to thrive, they highlight how these traits can play out differently depending on the situation. If someone is born with psychopathy but doesn't have the right opportunities, they might end up dangerous. Think Ted Bundy. On the flip side, if they can direct their tendencies into a career, like Andy McNabb did, they can find success. Earlier in this book, we touched on hypnotism as a tool in dark psychology. NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, is a key method hypnotists use to influence others. It's a captivating concept. Looking at the story of Richard Bandler, one of its creators, offers valuable insights into hypnotic influence and other aspects of dark psychology. Richard Bandler is a bit of a polarizing figure. He's a perfect example of how those who dabble in dark psychology can show one side of their life, while the reality can be quite different. On one hand, Bandler boasts a list of remarkable achievements. He claims he used his own methods to ditch his wheelchair and has helped patients including those with schizophrenia, using unconventional techniques that mainstream psychology often rolls its eyes at. Because of this, many who don't know much about him picture him as a kind-hearted, positive grandfather type. But the truth about Bandler is much more complicated. He had a rough upbringing, facing abuse from various adult men. He lives contrary to many things he says his methods can fix. For instance, he talks about how his NLP techniques can help people kick bad habits. Yet he himself smoked for years, and he's acknowledged a past with cocaine, which is an interesting choice for a famous hypnotist. Perhaps the most shocking part of his story is the murder trial he went through. There's no denying that a woman was shot with Bandler's gun. He was cleared of any wrongdoing, claiming his cocaine dealer was responsible. When he talks about what happened, he focuses more on how long it took for the jury to find him innocent, rather than on the serious nature of the event itself. Bandler's drug use raises eyebrows, especially since he's not the only big name in psychology with a history like this. Sigmund Freud, the father of modern psychoanalysis, was also known to be a heavy cocaine user, advocating for its therapeutic use. These two men highlight how those who push the boundaries of dark psychology often live outside societal norms, deciding what's acceptable for themselves. There's a lot to unpack from their experiences that sheds light on dark psychology and hypnotism. Richard Bandler is a fascinating figure, and what really stands out about him is how he can evoke such wildly different reactions from people. Some see him as a true inspiration, dedicating their time and resources to be near him. Others, though, view him as a dangerous character, a drug user entangled with murder, yet possessing incredible influence. What's clear is that Bandler is a master of reframing situations. When asked about his past with cocaine, he quickly shifts the focus, claiming he was more hooked on candy and peanuts, labeling them worse for his health. At first, this approach seems to lighten a serious issue, turning it into something almost rational through comparison. But if you dig a little deeper, it's apparent that Bandler's former cocaine dealer was killed with Bandler's gun, and he stood trial for that. Despite the seriousness, the loss of life, he still manages to equate cocaine with peanuts. Bandler's story highlights how skilled hypnotists and NLP users can control what people focus on. He often dismisses questions about his personal life, preferring to emphasize how he's helped thousands, while his more troubling habits largely get overlooked. Initially, this argument seems reasonable, but it loses weight once you remember his drug use and the messy split with his NLP co-creator. Another area where Bandler excels is in undetected mind control. Many of his patients describe life-changing experiences with him, experiences they can't fully comprehend or remember. This ability to affect people profoundly without revealing what's really happening is a hallmark of undetected mind control. Anyone skeptical about this power just needs to consider Bandler and the numerous accounts that showcase his mastery, pointing to the methods of cult-like control. Earlier in this book, we looked at how cults generally use brainwashing to pull in new members. Now let's dive into some specific examples of cults and how they apply these techniques to push their agenda. Take the Ku Klux Klan, or KKK. This secretive group, known for its white supremacist views, has largely gone underground, especially after its heyday. KKK recruiters stick to classic brainwashing methods tailored to their goals. By examining how they do this, we can see how these processes can be twisted to fit a specific agenda. The KKK usually starts by targeting individuals, often young white men who are struggling. Common targets include those who recently lost jobs or faced other hardships. At first, recruiters come off as friendly neighbors or concerned friends trying to offer support in tough times. They take their time to dig into the grievances these men have, slowly tying their frustrations to other races. For example, if someone lost a job, the recruiter might nudge them to blame the presence of other races in America. As the relationship builds, the recruiter introduces more overtly racist ideas, but dresses them up as promoting white brotherhood and standing up for their own kind. Depending on the recruit's response and the recruiter's sense of trustworthiness, they might get invited to KKK events where they can meet other members. These initial gatherings are often casual, like barbecues, designed to draw recruits in before they encounter something as extreme as a cross burning. The KKK's recruitment method clearly shows how cults and extremist groups share similar strategies in using brainwashing to bring in new followers. Another example is the People's Temple in Jonestown, where the cult had a mystical allure that attracted followers and pushed them to commit extreme acts. Jim Jones was a charismatic cult leader who gained a shocking amount of power and influence. Similar to how the KKK blurs the line between a cult, a political group, and a terrorist force, Jonestown was a mix of extreme left politics, blind loyalty to Jones, and vague spiritual ideas about things like suicide and reincarnation. Jones's tactics showed just how effective slow brainwashing can be. He first drew in potential followers with what seemed like reasonable political views, including support for alternative systems like communism. Over time, new members gave up their freedom and sanity, leading to Jonestown's tragic end: mass suicide. After urging his followers to commit a political assassination, Jones led them to drink poison. Mothers even gave poisoned Kool-Aid to their babies, while Jones took his own life. Jonestown serves as a stark warning about the dangers of dark psychology. When paranoid magnetic leaders hold sway over isolated individuals, it can lead to horrifying events, like mass poisoning even of children. Another chilling example of isolation's power is the case of Patty Hearst. She was raised in a well-known family, but was kidnapped by a radical group called the SLA. Her abduction shows how brainwashing works. During her kidnapping, she was violently treated and kept in total isolation, blindfolded, and locked in a closet. This brutal isolation continued until the SLA threatened her life. Gradually, they let her join their political talks. Only after she said she wanted to join did they allow her to see her captors. Once she pledged her loyalty, she endured horrific abuse, including drugging and sexual violence. The result of intense physical and political brainwashing was shocking. Patricia Hearst, once a respected individual, ended up committing serious crimes for the SLA. She participated in documented bank robberies, brandishing a machine gun and threatening the public violently. What's fascinating about Hearst's story is the clear evidence of how brainwashing affected her. After her arrest, psychiatrists showed that her IQ had plummeted. It was as if she had become a zombie. The impact was so severe that her sentence was reduced, and she eventually received a full presidential pardon. The techniques used by extremist groups reveal a lot about dark psychology. Looking at the KKK, we can see how recruiters pinpoint a victim's weaknesses and exploit them ruthlessly to align them with the group's beliefs. Their approach highlights that the specific ideology behind the brainwashing often doesn't matter. A skilled recruiter can manipulate a vulnerable person to adopt almost any view, given enough time. Take Jonestown, for example. Isolation there led many to the brink of madness. Modern groups like ISIS also isolate individuals, pushing them to commit suicide for their political agenda. Jonestown laid the groundwork for these horrific practices. For cult leaders like Jim Jones, the ultimate show of power often ends in mass deaths. In the case of Patty Hearst and the SLA, brainwashing took a quicker and more aggressive route than usual. Hearst's actions reflected the power of Stockholm Syndrome, as she seemed to act in her captor's interests even after gaining her freedom. This clearly shows that psychological chains can be far more binding than physical ones. In conclusion, you now have an understanding of the most dangerous minds. You've learned the principles of dark psychology and how they function. You can spot the traits of people who might try to use their dark psychological skills on you by applying what you've learned to various situations. Real-life stories have shown us the extremes of dark psychology and how it's been used throughout history. Each reader of this book will take away something a bit different. Did you walk away feeling empowered with solid strategies to protect yourself and your loved ones from negativity in the world? Or did you find it a bit thrilling, maybe even a bit darker? Perhaps now you see yourself with a secret tool that gives you an edge. No matter how you feel, you recognize the truth of life. There's no unlearning this. This book acts as a playbook for the real game of life. How you choose to play is entirely up to you.